Did everybody get the pictures of this so far? I can let it go through one more time. Okay. Yeah. And then we'll get started. That way you get your photos.
All right. I think we're about ready to get started here. And I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Kennebec Falls Assembly Baptist Church. It's our privilege to host this gardening seminar class. And just want to get started. How many of you found out about this from a friend inviting you? Raise your hand. Okay. How many found out about this just by seeing a flyer posted up somewhere? How many might have seen something on social media? Okay. Awesome. So I just want to know how we can let people know when these events are happening. So thank you very much for your feedback there. Again, it's our privilege to have with us this afternoon Dawn Trammell. She brings with her at least 10 years of experience in Northwest gardening. And as many of you know, we have a colder climate here. It's obvious. Thank you for each one of you. Thank you for giving each one of you traveling mercies here in the snow-covered roads. But Dawn's going to be sharing some of the techniques that she has learned about how to thrive Northwest gardening in our climate areas. That's what we're here to learn about. And we're also going to be having a bonus feature that she'll give more information about. We have Mr. Brent Wagner, who's out in the foyer right now. We'll be sharing more information about herbs and how we can know the benefits and which herbs to choose and things like that. So you want to stick around for that. Many of you got your folder with your slides. There's space to write some notes if you feel free to do that. And you might notice another, we're going to be trying to have as many of these types of events this year as we can. So we have the upcoming one after this, you see in your folder. It's going to be about what to do when the power grid goes down, how to can and preserve food. So all those good things you're going to be growing in the garden, how to preserve those through the year. So you don't want to miss that. This will be upcoming in April 30th as well. And so I want to get some time to volunteer, but I would like to acknowledge the creator of all things, who makes the gardens to grow. He brings out the sunshine, brings the rain. So we want to ask the Lord's blessing to be with us, that we might learn these important things of how to be more self-sustainable. But in all these things, we are always dependent upon God. So we'll bow your heads with you. We'll start with a word of prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity we have to know you, our Creator, our Redeemer. We ask that you would guide us now and give us ears of understanding as we learn these practical aspects of gardening that thrive in our climate here. We ask that you would give the speaker, Dawn Trammell, and help us to be attentive learners here this afternoon. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay, are we on? Okay, good. Thank you for that introduction. All right, has anybody been to one of my classes before? One. Has anybody seen it online before? Well, good. That means that I can tell all the same stories again, so you guys won't mind. You haven't heard them before. All right, so this is important for me right now because I feel like I've been impressed by God to get this message out to as many people as I possibly can. I just feel like things are wrapping up in this world and they're going crazy, as some of you know. And so 3 years ago, the Lord has opened doors for me to be able to teach these classes at all sorts of places. And so I've gone wherever He's called. And right now I'm doing 1 or 2 classes a week all over the place. And it's been a real blessing for me. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. It's difficult, obviously, to grow in this kind of climate up here because I'm not from here. I've been here 10 years and I've always gardened. But it's completely different in the Northwest. And so the things that I have learned, people have heard about, and they said, wow, that's amazing what you're doing. You need to be sharing this with people. So the first class I did was maybe 8 years ago. I just went for gardening, and that was it. And there was about 150 people that came. And then from there on, I just kept getting calls. And so I feel like it's a real privilege to stand up here in front of you. I do not pretend to know everything, but I am willing to share what I do know. And every single year, I learn more. So that's why I'm here, and I hope that you can learn some things and not be overwhelmed. But if you have questions, you can get a business card, you can email me, just say, I was at your class, please clarify this, or whatever. So it may seem overwhelming to do at first, but try to stick with me here. Sometimes I talk really fast, because there's a lot to go through. So part 1 is Gardening 101, starting at the very beginning, and try to hit, from, the amateur to the expert, okay? Part 2 will be on the winter garden, which is growing year-round, and what to grow every month, and building a hoop house, and all of that. And then part 3, we have a special guest speaker here to help me out with that part, how to be on the earth. So hopefully everybody can stay and hear the whole thing. So let's start at the very beginning. Okay? Preparing your garden is number 1. And if you can do this in the fall, it's even better, like putting out manures and things like that. Composting and things. But number 1 is to put up a fence. And people laugh at that, but really in reality, if you think about it, if you don't put up a fence and you go out and you put your plants out, what happens? They get eaten right away. And then you say, oh, now I need to put up a fence. Well, guess what? Those animals and critters are going to plow the fence down or jump the fence because now they know what's behind the fence. Whereas if before you would just put your time and effort into putting it up first, then they don't have any reason to jump the fence because they don't know there's anything behind it. Okay, so keep that in mind. Put up a good fence. Preparing your soil can take all sorts of different forms, and I'm not going to go into soil testing. That would be a whole other seminar. But you can buy kits if you'd like to do that, and it'll tell you what you need to put into your soil. If you want to use animal manures, you can do that. Some people do, some people don't. Okay, I'm just telling you, just give you different options and ideas. You can use hand tillers or double digging with your own shovel if you want to work up some good muscles in your arms. Newspaper, cardboard, worm castings, compost from your kitchen, all sorts of things. And that's why I say if you start in the fall, you can go out and dig a big trench and bury all of your kitchen compost in there, and it'll decompose all winter long, and then in the fall it's ready. Okay? So it does take some time to do that. And then what kinds of things do you need to get started? Some people think that it has to be really expensive to garden, and it doesn't. I try to keep everything as simple as possible. Use what you have. Okay? Use the containers that you have. Like these are mushroom containers. These are tofu containers. This is a juice container. Okay? So just start collecting containers. Go to thrift stores and get your shovels and your rakes and your hose. Find things like that. Start collecting seeds now. So it doesn't have to be expensive. Use what you have. I always recommend that people start with a really good potting mix. Trust me, I've made the mistake of going the cheaper route. Okay? Your seedlings will not do very well. Get something that is specific for starting seeds. It has all the micronutrients and everything in it that your seedlings need to get off to a good start. Because if they don't get a good start in the beginning, then they're going to struggle the whole entire time you're trying to start them or grow them. Okay? So spend a little money, get some good potting mix. All right, so now let's get into the seeds. We've got all of the other things that we need, so let's talk about seeds. How exciting is it to get catalogs in the mail in the wintertime, right? You're looking at them, oh, I want that, I want to grow this, and it's really fun. Okay, but let's make sure that we are growing the right things and that we are getting the right types of seeds. Okay? Now, this, I'm going to assume that this is a Zone 5 gardening area. I get all sorts of different zones, but I'm going to teach to a Zone 5. So wherever you are, just adjust if you need to, okay? This area would be considered a short gardening season. And the definition of that is that you have 110 days or less without frost. So actually it's going to be about 90. Okay, but that's the technical definition of a short growing season. All right, I think everybody in here probably has 90 days, approximately. All right, so that means that when you're looking at seeds, you need to make sure that you are getting seeds that are 110 days or less. But actually, I would say 90. I would stick with 90 or less. It'd just be easier for you, a lot less heartache, okay? So there's two different kinds of crops that you can grow. Number one is the cool season hardy. Hardy meaning that it can take some cold, like beets and broccoli and asparagus. There's a list there, okay? Those are hardy crops. The tender crops, this second column there would be things that you cannot start until after frost. Okay, or you're going to use some type of season extension, which I'll show you later. That would be like your green beans and your corn, things like that. Okay, the two different types of crops that you can grow. So when you're looking at seed packages, sometimes it can get confusing and frustrating. You don't know what everything means. Like, what's the difference between heirloom and non-heirloom? Okay, so heirloom seeds mean that you should be able to save the seed from that plant and grow that plant again next year and have the same plant. All right, so one good place to order those would be like Baker Creek, if you've never heard of them. Baker Creek has all heirloom seeds. And I would not say that I do not grow just all heirloom, because not all heirloom do really well in cold climate. So you just have to kind of experiment. And I will also say that if you're going to be growing a hoop house or a greenhouse full of tomatoes, and you've got like 20 different tomatoes in there, or you've got 20 different types of winter squash growing, there may be some cross-pollination going on. So even though you save the seeds from an heirloom plant, you may not get that exact plant because it was cross-pollinated with something else. Okay, so keep that in mind. Non-heirloom is just the opposite. You can save seeds from it, but you're not guaranteed what you're going to get. So if anybody's ever saved seeds from a non-heirloom, sometimes it's a surprise and it grows, and you're like, what is that? You're looking at it going, I thought it was this, but okay. But sometimes it's kind of fun to see what grows from that seed that crossed or whatever. As long as it's edible, I really don't care what it looks like. I just want it to be edible. So. And then the other thing, when you're looking at the seeds, it'll tell you the description of the plant. It'll tell you the days to germination. That means when it pops up out of the dirt. Okay? So if it says days to germinate, this one says 5 to 10. That could be 15 to 20 if the seeds are old, or if it's in a cold place and it's not warm enough. Okay? So just because it says that 5 to 10 days, that doesn't mean that's when you're going to eat it. That means that that's when it should be popping up out of the dirt, okay? Yeah. And then the days to maturity, that's when you should be technically able to eat it. So that means after it's popped up out of the dirt, if this one says days to maturity 50 days, so let's say it took 3 weeks for it to pop up, that's 21 days out of your 90 days of growing season, right? So start thinking. And then it takes 50 days to mature. Here we are into August already, right? Just to have a turnip. So keep that in mind. This is why I start early. People ask, why do you teach classes in January and February? Well, because that's when I start my seeds. I start everything from seed. I don't buy plants. One reason is the cost. And another reason is you have more control over what you're growing. So you can look and see this grows in a cold season. So this one will grow here. Whereas if you go to Home Depot and you try to buy plants, what is this? Where did this come from? It could have come from California, and it might not do very well here at all. So you know what I'm saying? That's why I do the seeds like this. All right, the packages will also tell you how deep to plant your seeds. Make sure you follow that, because I've done them too deep before and they won't come up. Okay? And of course, how far apart to put them. So this might be a helpful chart for you if you want to take a picture of that. This is what I use for Zone 5. So these are starting seeds indoors, okay, without heat and without extra light. So these are just little, I'll show you, but just little seeds sown in a little container in a sunny window. And so that's why I start so early. If you're going to be adding heat and light, you don't have to start as early. Right, so keep that in mind. So celery takes forever to germinate and to come up, okay? So that's why I start that so early. Eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes. Mine are already, like my tomatoes are already about 4 inches tall. My peppers are about 2 inches tall because I started them so early. And then on the right-hand column, you'll see when you can put out the more cold hardy crops, like your greens and your peas and things. You can put them out when you can start working the soil. So in other words, when your 8 feet of snow is gone and your 6 inches of ice is gone, then you can get your hoe in there and you can move the soil around and you can start putting in things like your potatoes and onions. Okay. But then after the frost is when you do the other things. When is after the frost? First week of June, approximately, maybe, second week of June, and then you may have a frost. Anyway, it varies. We do the best we can. I also recommend to keep good records because, especially if you're sowing your own seed, you might want to put down, I sowed these turnip seeds January 1st and they didn't come up till February 1st, and then I wasn't eating them until whatever. And so then next year you'll remember how long that took until you could actually eat it, and then you may start them earlier next year. Because you always think you're going to remember, but you don't. There's too much to remember when you're planting seeds, when you're starting seeds like that. All right, so I used to bring a bucket and plant and do all that up here, but I realized nobody could see it. So I took a video of it, and I'm going to walk you through it here as we go. So this is some of my favorite little containers, little tofu tubs. I drill holes in them, and I like them because they're shallow. Okay, this is how I start my seeds. I have a bucket there with some potting mix in it, and I've already pre-wet it. Okay, you can kind of see the consistency of it there, kind of like biscuit mix or something like that. Kind of crumbly, but you don't want it dripping, soaking wet. But it's better if you get it wet first before you plant your seeds, because then when you're wetting it, your seeds are not going all over the container. They're going to stay where you put them. Okay. This is how I used to work at a nursery at a greenhouse, and I learned all sorts of tips and tricks there. And so I just kind of patted it down just to make it level. And then you can see I'm really fancy here, using my finger and poking little holes. And I've got some tomato seeds that I had saved from last year. And I'm just putting them in the little holes there. Okay, nothing fancy. This is how I do it. I have a calendar, and I just look at it every year and say, okay, it's time to do the tomato seeds this week. Oh, now it's time to do the pepper seeds, and this is how I do it. And just keep your little containers like that. Make sure that you have holes in them for drainage, though, whatever containers you're going to be using, okay? And you can see I covered them up there. And just pat it gently down. Pat it gently down.
Is it okay to put more than one seed in the middle?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely recommend put 2 or 3 seeds in each hole, especially if they're older seeds, because they may not all come up. You can always thin them out later. Yep. And by thinning them out, I mean clipping it off with your fingernails. Don't yank it out because it'll ruin the root growth underneath of the other plants. Okay? And so then just pat it gently down and then water it gently. When you're watering seeds, you don't want your seeds to go all over the place. So you can spray them, or if you have a little handheld mister on your kitchen sink, that works really well too. So that's how I get the seeds started. Okay? And then I have people ask me questions, so I try to answer those. What happens if they don't come up? They never germinate. These could be some of the reasons. Your soil might be too cold, so I recommend when you get it wet in your little bucket there, just use hot water on it. That will help to germinate the seeds too. Make sure that you're keeping it wet, but not soaking. You don't want it sopping wet, okay? And check how deep you put your seeds in. Maybe that's why you need to move some soil off the top. And if it's really old seed, I've germinated 11, 12-year-old seed before, but it does take time to do that. And if it still won't come up after 2-3 weeks or whatever, you may need to put it in a warm spot, like on top of your refrigerator is like the perfect heat almost. If you have a wood stove, put it on a rack above your wood stove. Also, you could put it over a heating vent, but it will dry out very quickly, so just keep that in mind. But usually, if you can just add a little bit of heat to the bottom of it somehow, it'll germinate. Okay, just make sure you're keeping it wet at that time. So in other words, don't get rid of old seed. If you have old seed, keep it, okay? Keep it around. All right, so this is another solution. These are just lettuce tubs that I've flipped up on top of each other in these little greenhouses. And you can see that's my sunny window, okay? It's not fancy. And then I just put the little packs of seeds in there to grow. Then I will keep them covered up like that at night. It keeps them warmer. And sometimes during the day, it's a cooler day. But if there's a lot of sun coming in there and hitting those plants, it will heat up inside that little greenhouse very quickly. So take the top off, let it air out, because it can grow mold in there, and you'll have other problems. Now, what if they pop up and then they stop growing and they're not doing anything after that? It could be because your soil, your potting mix is old, or like I've done before, you got the cheaper stuff and it's not working as well. Done that. So what you could do then is just get some fish fertilizer or seaweed fertilizer and put that on them. Usually they'll bounce right back. Okay. And then again, maybe it's just too cold. You might need to put them in a warmer place. and maybe you're overwatering it too much. So once they come up, then these are some other problems that people ask me about, pests like aphids and gnats. If you're having gnats in your soil, that's probably because your soil or your pots were not sterilized. That happens sometimes because they'll overwinter in there. So again, you can sterilize your soil. You can look that up online, how to sterilize soil. Make sure that when you're done with your pots at the end of the season that you're washing them really, really well, with soap and things. Otherwise, that's going to get into the soil mixed too. And make sure you have some air going. Blow a fan across your little seedlings if you need to. Make sure you don't have them covered up with, your plastic little greenhouses that you build or whatever all the time, because that's not good for them either. And then the legginess is something that happens because mostly of lack of light, which happens a lot to my plants because they're in the window. You can remedy that by having a grow light over top of them if you want to. That way they'll just grow straight up. And then make sure you're rotating them also, and then transplanting them, which we'll go over. And then damping off is when they suddenly just come up all of a sudden and then they just die. Again, that's probably a soil problem, or you watered them too much. So, this is me being honest with you and what my tomatoes have looked like. That's legginess right there, okay? Does anybody else have tomatoes that look like that? Okay, don't worry though, there's a remedy. I'm going to show you what the remedy is, okay? So one thing you can do is stake them up. If you can't get to transplanting them right away, stake them up with some little bamboo skewers or something like that. You can do that. But really what you want to do is transplant them, and I'll show you that. So there are three main plants that I transplant: the tomatoes, the peppers, and the eggplant, because I start them so early, okay? And the reason I start them early is because by the time they get outside, by the time you're putting them outside into your garden or to your hoop house, your plant should be about 2 feet tall. Because the season is so short. Okay? So I'm getting tomatoes in June, July, August, and September, and sometimes October if it's not too cold. By doing this. Okay? People always ask me, can't you just take a pot this size and put a seed in it and grow it this way? You can, but you will have tomatoes that look like that. Okay, they'll be tall and skinny and leggy, and they will not be healthy. Okay, so what we did at the greenhouse, we would get these little plug trays that would come in with little tiny plants like that. We would take them out, and we would put them into the cell packs, the black pony packs, the 4-pack, the 6-pack. We transplant them to those first, and when they would get tall, then we would put them in the next size up, and then when they would get too tall, then we would put them in the next size up. Okay, and the reason you do that is because when it's in a smaller container, when you start them in these, the roots can't go very far. Okay, so they'll hit the side of the container and then force the growth of the stem, which will make a healthier, stronger stem. So then, when you transplant it into the next size up, same thing happens again. It makes a thicker, healthier stem. It can't go very far. Now, you don't want the plant to be in here so long that it gets root bound, obviously, because that's not good for it either. Root bound is when the roots are wrapped around inside the pot and they have nowhere to go. But if that does happen, just clip them apart or take your fingers and spread them apart and then put them in the next size up and they'll be okay. Alright, so if you notice the picture there in the center, that's a pepper plant. In the center you will see 2 little leaves. Those are called the true leaves, or the second set of leaves. When you see your little seedlings that you started, okay, in your little container, when you see that second set of leaves on there, then you know it's safe to transplant them. Do not transplant before that because they'll more than likely, they will struggle. They may make it, but they're going to struggle, but more than likely they won't make it and they'll die. So once you see that second set of leaves, you can transplant them. So I'm going to show you a video of how to transplant these from the tofu tub to the next size up, okay? So these are tomatoes. You see the second set of leaves there in the center? Okay? So I literally just take a fork and I dig them out of there. I'm not that careful or particular. I've been doing this for so many years, I don't even worry about it anymore. And then you have your next size up, that's a pony pack, is what that's called. And you bury it down in there as deep as you can, right to the top leaves. Okay? Pat the soil down in there. Now what I'm showing you is a tall, leggy one. I want you to see the difference in how I'm going to transplant this one, because this is how you can save your leggy-looking plants. I should say just the tomatoes anyway. So if you watch what I do with the stem here, I'm actually bending it. Okay, and put it down in the hole gently. And bury it all the way up to the top leaves there. And then fill it in with dirt and water it. Okay? So I'm going to show you this because I'm a visual kind of a person. So here's your leggy tomato, okay? You literally just take it out and just kind of fold it gently into a U like this and stick it down into the dirt gently. You don't want to crack it, obviously, and break it, okay? But just gently stick it down in there. You cannot do that with peppers or eggplant. But tomato is flexible enough that you can do that. So that's how you save your leggy tomato plants. And you do the same thing with them when you go up to the next size pot. If you've left them too long and they're tall and leggy and falling over, you do the same thing in here. In fact, you can take that tomato plant and kind of wrap it around the inside of the pot if you're gentle enough with it. And each time you transplant it, you want to put it up to the neck. As deep as you can get it down there, because all along that whole stem, it will grow more roots. And it will be a much stronger plant. So here would be the next size that I would go to. Like I said, use what you have. Styrofoam cups, solo cups, okay? And then after this, how do you know when to transplant? Well, when they start getting so tall, they look like they're about to fall over, then it's time to put them in the next size up, okay? And here would be the last transplant. Now, if you have a heated greenhouse or something to that effect where you can put them out earlier, you don't have to probably go to this size. You may be able to put your tomatoes out in April. I don't know. Everybody's situation is different. So then you might just be, going to this size, and that's it. But if you're in a really cold climate, and in fact, if you don't even have a greenhouse, and you're going directly into the garden outside, you're going to have to go into a bigger pot, for sure. Okay? Like I said, you want your plants to be 2 feet tall, and maybe even have buds, flowers on it, before you put them outside. How many have been frustrated by getting green tomatoes around August? Yeah, I mean, that's where I was, but now I've learned if you start early and you transplant, you go to all this trouble. Yes, it takes time, it takes energy, okay, but it's worth it because you'll have fruit all summer long. And do that with tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant because you should be starting them in January and February. Okay? All right, so that's the transplanting. Now, how do you set your plants out? If you take a plant that was in your warm, sunny window like this and you just throw it out in your garden right away, what do you think is going to happen to it? It's going to croak. It's going to be in shock. You can't do that to plants. You have to harden them off, is what it's called. Okay? That you're getting them used to being outside in the sun or the coolness or the wind or the pets that are brushing up against them or whatever it is. So the way you do that is I just get big tubs and I'll put them all in tubs and I haul them out, in, out, in, out, in. So the first day, I start about 2 to 3 weeks before they're going to go out into the greenhouse. If I say hoop house, greenhouse, it's all the same to me. I know it's not technically, but I use those terms interchangeably. And so if I'm going to put these out into my hoop house at the beginning of May, I will probably start hardening them off in the hoop house. That's the picture on the right, in April. Okay, like mid-April, beginning April. I will put them all up there like that, and then I will cover them up, and I'll go over this again, but I'll cover them up with a frost blanket, and then I will pray. Because you never know in April what the temperatures are going to be at night. Sometimes I will double cover or triple cover them at night, because by that time you can't have 30 of these sitting on your dresser in your sunny window, right? They have got to go somewhere. So that's where they go. And so I leave them covered up like that for about a week. I don't do anything with them. And then I would take the covers off during the day for about another week. Okay, you see how they're getting used to being in the greenhouse then. Because they're still being exposed to that sunlight that they haven't had all day long, just directly on them. So this will protect them from that shock of being in sun all day long too. Not only cold, but also the sun can be very damaging to brand new plants. So if you're going outside into your garden then, put them out on your front porch. Do not put them directly out into the sun right away. Put them in some shade. Part sun, part shade for a few hours a day. Bring them in the next day, a few more hours. Okay, bring them in the next day, a few more hours. Then start moving them out a little bit more into the sun. So do that about 2 or 3 weeks, and they'll be used to being outside. I'm not saying they're not going to be in shock anymore when you put them in the garden. They probably will be, but it'll be a lot less that way. Okay. So this is just showing you if you're going to put them into a hoop house. Make sure you're digging a deep enough hole you can bury those tomatoes down in there. And some people put their tomatoes in lengthwise like this, and they'll grow roots all along there too. The dark black is the worm castings. Put some type of compost or fertilizer or something in the bottom of each hole when you're doing them. They'd be much better that way. And also when you're planting your tomato plants, put a radish seed in with each plant. And it keeps the pests away. Let it grow, let it flower. The bugs will eat the radish and not your plant. And also garlic. Put a clove of garlic in between all of your plants, or like I did in the center there, I just grow rows of garlic and just leave it in there. Just cut the green tops off and just leave it, let it grow all the time, and that keeps pests away too. Also, when you're transplanting your plants into the garden, then make sure you're putting in your supports. So if you're going to grow your tomatoes on stakes, put the stake in when you put the plant in. Because if you pound your stake in 3 weeks later, you're busting up that whole entire root system that's already been growing. So make sure you put those in. And then when you are transplanting, try to do it in the evening if you can. After 4 o'clock is what I've heard. Somebody told me one time there's some scientific thing that happens to a plant after 4 p.m. where something shuts down inside of it, and so it won't go into so much shock. And in fact, if you can do it on a rainy day, that's even better. Okay? It just helps your plant to adjust. These are some different ideas for support. That's a cattle panel on the bottom right, and then these are bird netting on the top right. That's green snap peas growing up inside the hoop house on the bird netting. That works really well for them. And then I've also done strings for tomatoes. They are hooked to tent stakes and then up to a beam. So that's just another idea for you to support. And then if you just have a little space left somewhere in your hoop house or in the corner of your garden that you don't know what to do with, what you can do is put an intensive planting, I call it, and you might empty out a whole entire packet of lettuce in that one little tiny area. Let it come up, and then after your other plants are established and you've got your broccoli out, your cabbage out, then you can just take those little tiny plants and dig them up and put them all over the garden wherever you want them, because they transplant really well. So you've got them all growing, and you don't know where you want them yet, maybe. This is the greatest way I've found to do that. I move them around all the time. Lettuce transplants really well. Okay, so let me show you. This is me transplanting them just so you can see. This is celery. Literally just go around the plant and just kind of dig your roots out. Take it with your shovel and go, stick it where you want it. I am moving stuff around. Not everything transplants, obviously, but, this is celery. And so celery, actually, if you take it before the frost comes and move it into your hoop house, you'll have celery. You should have celery all winter long. And then when spring comes, take that same celery and move it back out into your garden in summer. You can have the same celery plant for 2-3 years. It's amazing. But I will tell you this, I don't know about you guys up here, but when we had minus 20 degree temperatures here not too long ago, yeah, my celery didn't like that too well. But I will tell you this, it was located on the very edge of the greenhouse right inside the plastic. Whereas in previous years, it's in the center bed of the greenhouse. So just words with the wise. I would not put it right on the very edge of the coldest part of your greenhouse. Move it inside more and cover it, and then you should have celery. All right, so people ask me about weeds. This is just an idea. If you keep your cardboard boxes and put them down in the walkways, that helps keep weeds down. You can buy fabric, of course, but I like to keep things simple. And then obviously you could just till the weeds up. I've done that too. If you're hand watering, spot watering, that helps because your weeds aren't being watered by a sprinkler system, you know, that's going all over. And then I get questions on pollination. There seems to not be as many bees and things pollinating insects. So the way you pollinate tomatoes is you just walk through your greenhouse or through your garden, just kind of shake the vines a little bit, and the pollen inside the flower will shake and pollinate itself. Or if you have a fan running in there, that usually will do it too. Eggplant pollinates itself, so you can leave it covered up all year long, and it likes it warm. Cucumbers, if you're going to do, and I would recommend you do those in your greenhouse too. If you get the kind that's called parthenocarpic, it also does not require pollination. And if you want, I can show you those. They're in here, but that's what they're called, is parthenocarpic. No pollination required for that particular type of cucumber. And then melons and summer and winter squash. That's a picture there of zucchini. And the way that you can pollinate those is by hand. So what you're looking at there is the female flower. It hasn't opened yet, but that's the female flower because it's attached to the fruit. Okay, so you see the fruit. That'll be the female flower. That'll open up and it'll look like a bowl when it's opened up. And then the male flower is on the other fronds that do not have the fruit. So you literally just take the male flower and pollinate the female flower, and you can just leave it there. You don't have to take it apart or anything. You can just leave it like that. You can watch the videos on YouTube on how to do it. But I've been doing that for a while, and that works really well doing that. Especially if you're not seeing insects around. Okay, so how can we extend the season? These are some ideas for you. So one year I dug up pepper plants and brought them into my sunny window, and they did ripen. They turned red and orange, as you can see. So I was able to have them until December. So that's an idea. This is another idea I really like. I saw this online. That is just a bag of potting mix under there that a lady cut the top out of, and then just put a whole bunch of lettuce and mustard and whatever collard green seeds in there, and then covered it with a tub. So that was a little greenhouse there on our porch. And that's great, but you know, it'll get hot, so make sure you're ventilating that. But what a great way to have food, just right there outside your door. Easy. Okay, this is another idea. If you're going to direct sow your, I think that's broccoli, no, that's cabbage, but they would work the same. Direct sow, and then you still want them to keep a little bit warm so the frost doesn't completely kill that teeny tiny little seedling. Then I use these water bottles as little greenhouses. I just stick them down in the dirt around them. And they work great because they're ventilating. And you can still water down inside them also. This is something new that I found a couple of years ago called mulled water. And they work really well. You can put these out about 30 days before you put your plants out. So let's say that you're going to put your squash out, I don't know, May. Then I would put these out in April. Put them exactly where your plant is going to go, fill them up with water, and it'll heat everything, the soil and everything under there. It's creating its own little greenhouse so that it's ready for your plant. And then you put your plant down inside of it and leave it on there until your plant starts getting bigger and starts coming out the top, and you can get rid of that when the frost is gone. These are great. They're a little pricey, but they do work. Here's another idea for grow boxes. Just get some straw bales, put some glass windows over the top of them. But again, make sure you're ventilating because anything, especially under glass, will be very hot very quickly. Even in the winter time, it can get very hot. Okay. This right here is my favorite way of extending our short season. There's two different ways. These are called PEX tubing right here. And you just cut them to what they come in giant rolls, thank you. And you just cut them to whatever the width of your bed is and whatever height you're looking for, and just stick them in the dirt around your plants. And so what I do is I'll go out in probably April, and you know your soil is maybe working by then. Put some black plastic out. If you don't have black plastic, go get the free lumber wrap at these hardware stores. Usually you get free lumber wrap. And that's black. So make sure the black side is up. Put that out to start warming up your soil. Okay, start unthawing it a little bit. I'm always in a hurry. I'm always pushing the bar. How much sand can you get outside? If you're not worried about that, then you don't have to do this. But that's what I do. So I start by doing that. And then, when I can, I'll put the plants, I'll transplant my plants into the ground, and then I will install these around the plants, and then I will cover the plants with these, I'll go over this again, but this is AG19 Frost, it's Frost Blanket, gardening fabric. Frost fabric or Frost Blanket, it goes by different names. You can see them covered up over there. And so that's how I will get an extra 30 days at the beginning of the season. This covers the frost in May. Okay, so I just added the whole month of May, basically. And then, at the end of the season, I do the same thing. So like beginning of September, I will put these back in again, and put these back over everything again, and now I've got another 30 days. I've got all of September. So your 90-day season just went to 150, approximately. Okay, I've been doing this for a long time, and it works really, really great. Now, it's not completely foolproof, obviously. This is just a thin cloth, okay? So I wouldn't be putting tomatoes out in April or May. I'm talking, your more hardy stuff, like your cabbage and your kale and, all of those things that were on the chart there. And also, I may go over this again, I don't remember, but the cabbage plants, if you've ever dealt with cabbage worms, get an insect cover. It's not a frost blanket, but it's the same thing. It's 0.45 ounces. Insect barrier, insect cover, something like that. And cover your cabbage as soon as you put it in the ground. Just like I did right there. And seal up every single little nook and cranny that they can possibly get. And I'm talking even on the ground, like take the dirt and put the dirt over top of the covers all around it. Because those moths are wicked. So a 9-year-old built this for his mother for Mother's Day. So that is just something that anybody can do. That is just literally some of that gray conduit shoved into the ground, and then a pallet in the front cut in half for a door. So these are just ways to extend your season. So let's go over some other things that you should be growing and some tips and tricks. This is already at the beginning. You should have already taken a picture of it, so I don't want to spend time on it. But if you're not growing herbs, make sure you're growing herbs. Okay, they're very good, very medicinal for you. This is just a list of what they do. And if you don't have these, I can't. Oh, you have a printout. You've got it then. Okay. Asparagus comes back every year. I've heard it can last 20 years or more. So once you put it in the ground, the very first year, don't harvest any. That's hard to do, but don't, okay? Second year, you can harvest maybe 3 or 4 spears, and then the third year, you can harvest. Okay, but make sure that you let them grow up, like the picture there, seed. Okay, when that dies, cut it off and lay it on top of your bed, and just leave it like that all winter long. Cabbage grows well in a cold climate. Okay, I would recommend probably 2 different kinds. I would do a storage cabbage, and you can, if you're not sure what kind, they're literally called storage cabbages. Okay, good for storage, it'll say. And then you could do an early day cabbage if you want to eat some right away. So you can start your little cabbage seeds and you can transplant them. They transplant very well. So do your math and figure out when it can go out into your garden. And then count back here how many days it's going to take you to get it up. Okay, popped up out of the soil. Cabbages store really well. Okay, and they last a long time if you can get them into cold storage. I'm still eating cabbage. Okay, so this is why I'm encouraging you to grow things that I know grow well in a cold climate and that store really well. So if you do an early cabbage, you can eat it in maybe 30 days or something. So you might have cabbage in the middle of the summer with your smaller heads, but then your larger storage heads, you're not going to dig them up or do anything with them until, like end of September probably, or early October. You have to check the dates on that. And then you pull the entire plant out of the ground and hang it by the roots. If you have a garage or a cold storage room or a root cellar, basement, whatever you have, just hang it by the roots and you will have cabbage all winter long, like 6 months, 7 months. Has anybody seen the price of cabbage? Okay, so carrots. plant them outside and then dig them up before all the snow came. And then I had to try to figure out how to store them. And I tried every single thing that I could find online, how to store them. They were rot every single year. So I finally just leave them in the ground. I plant them in the greenhouse and I leave them there. And then I just go in there and pick, dig them up when I need them all winter long. So if you're doing succession planting with them, like every 3 or 4 weeks, that way they're not all ready at the exact same time. That should work well for you. Carrots and tomatoes are companion plants, and they grow really well together. So I do a row of carrots, and then a row of tomatoes, and a row of carrots, and a row of tomatoes like that, and they do really well. And it's almost time to start carrots. I start in April. Okay, garlic, if you're not growing that, start growing it, even if it's in a pot in your windowsill. Garlic is very medicinal. You're going to put it in the ground in maybe like middle of October or something like that. And then cover it up with some straw so it doesn't start sprouting, and then water it. Water it really, really well when you first put it in. That's when most of its growth is taking place, is in the fall. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then the way you know how to harvest or when to harvest is when the leaves start dying on the bottom. Bottom leaves start dying, turning yellow, then pull them out, dry them. You can weave them together or just clip them off and keep them in a mesh bag and with garlic. Green beans. Provider is a really good name of a green bean that I've grown up here. Provider is a bush bean, so they don't get really tall. You can do tall vining beans if you want to. Pole beans, but then you have to grow them on poles or fences or something like that. The bush beans I prefer because I don't have to mess with the fences. But the way that I have gotten pretty good harvested green beans is by starting them in flats. Okay, that's called a flat. And I put maybe, depending on how old your seed is, 1 or 2 seeds in each of those little plugs there. And I will probably start them in April also in the greenhouse, and I just water them out there. They come up, and then I put them out into the garden after frost. People told me, you can't do that. You can't transplant green beans. Well, I've been doing that for years. And I'll tell you what, the best thing about that is when you look at your row of green beans, you actually have a plant every 6 inches. Yes! Some of you know what I'm talking about. You put your seeds in, and then half your row doesn't come up. And you're like, what? I just wasted 20 feet of garden space and nothing popped up there. And it's too late to start over. You get one chance. In a cold season, you get one chance. Okay? There's no succession planting here. So, then you have some extras in your flat here that you can put in if one dies or whatever like that. So if you think you're going to need 50 green bean plants, plant 75. So that you've got a few extra. You can always get them away. And then you can can them. All right, so onions. There's a couple different ways you can do onions. Now, how many of us have bought the onion sets? The little onions that come in bags. How have they done for you? For me, okay, they never got very big. And I couldn't figure out why, and I started doing some research on them. Come to find out they're 2 years old. They're selling you 2-year-old onion seeds. Yeah, it's weird. You can look it up for yourself if you want to. So the best way to get onions is either grow them from seed or buy the plants. So if you go to North 40, they will have onion plants for a very short time if you get there on time. And you can buy them that way, and then you just put the little plants in the ground. Okay, so you do it that way. Or if you buy seeds, one good, I forgot to mention, make sure you're doing long day onion seeds. It does say that. Because we have long days in the Northwest, okay? Long day onions. Don't do the short day, long day. So one example would be yellow Spanish onions. That's done really well for me. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can start your onions in a pot like this. And it doesn't matter how far apart they are because they transplant really well. You can spread them out later. You can put 200 of them in here if you want to. And then spread them out to maybe 20 in here or whatever, however you want to do it. But you should be starting them now. Okay. And then I want to show you, this is what I'm doing now, which I'm overwintering them. So in August, I find a little patch of ground that doesn't have anything in it anymore, like maybe lettuce is done for or whatever. And I do an intensive planting of all my onions right outside in that hot direct sun, and they'll come up very quickly. Okay? Then, before the frost hits them and kills them, I take them and I move them into the greenhouse and I cover them with my frost blanket. And I leave them in there all winter long. It's amazing. I've been doing this for 2-3 years now. And then in the spring, I put them outside and then I will spread them out to where they need to be. So they've been moved 2 or 3 times. And they do great. And there's another trick that I found. If you would use, I get these mixed up. Okay, so it's bone meal. Bone meal is the nitrogen that makes the green tops grow. So you can put that in your bed first. That'll make them green. Okay? Then use the blood meal. The blood meal is what they need for the bulbs to get bigger. So get yourself a little black bag of the blood meal and sprinkle it around all the little bulbs. And what you're going to do is, it's called bringing them in. You can look it up online. But if you take a butter knife and you just kind of bend it like a hook, you can use your little knife to take the soil away from the bulbs so that just the roots are in the ground. That way the bulbs can swell and get bigger. Okay? And then when the tops start falling over, trust me, I've tried this, cutting them off doesn't help. They don't keep growing. They're done. When the tops fall over, pull them out and dry them. Okay? So that's how I'm doing onions now. So let me show you how I transplant them here. Just get underneath of them there with your shovel, kind of loosen them up, and then just pull them out of the dirt. They're pretty hardy. They're very resilient. They're amazing. Onions are. So, and I show you these tips and tricks because I just believe there's coming a time where we won't be able to go to North 40 and buy them. So we need to be figuring out how to do all this kind of stuff on our own. And onions are very medicinal too. So you need to make sure you have onions. So I already have a little trench dug right there, you can see in the hoop house. And like I said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be very particular about, oh, put them all exactly an inch apart. No, because you're going to be moving them again anyway. You're just overwintering them right there. So I just kind of put them there in a big, and then just cover them up with some soil and leave them there all winter long. So that's just an idea for you there. Okay, now let's come on to potatoes. So I think pretty soon it will be time to start getting your potatoes out of cold storage or ordering your seed potatoes and letting them sit into a bright cold room so that they can start sprouting their eyes. Okay, it's called pitting. And then after they have at least 2 eyes per potato, then you can put them in the ground there. I can't recommend one particular method for planting them. Some works for some people, some doesn't. You can look it up. Some people just literally lay them on the ground and cover them up with straw. Some people like to bury them in the dirt. Some people put them in pots. It's just kind of whatever. But you need to make sure if you're going to put them in a pot that it's at least 8 inches deep so that they can actually grow. Okay? And then, when you harvest them, make sure that you dry them out for at least a day or so, and then don't wash them. Put them away. Cold storage. So these are the sweet potatoes or yams. I put them in the same category here. Did you know you can grow them up here in the Northwest? Yeah. You can get your own sweet potato from the store and start growing your own slips if you'd like to. If you want to know how to do that, you can talk to me about that. I have a video out there also. And you can eat the vines. If you didn't know that, they are edible. So you can actually grow this in a pot in your house and cut the vines off and eat it fresh like spinach. Very nutritious for you. So they like it warm. So I probably wouldn't try to grow these outside without any protection. They take about 5 months. So the black bucket seems to be working pretty well for me. I used to have them just in the ground there, but the vines would go everywhere. I could not keep them. Oh, they were crazy. And the first year I did this, I had about 12-inch long sweet potatoes, but stop and wait. They were about the diameter of a pencil. And I couldn't figure out why. Well, my soil, it was just too thick. They couldn't spread out and grow. So they like loamy, loose, soil. So you can add some peat moss or coconut coir or things like that to it. And then, they're heavy feeders too. And they actually grow up and down this way. So if you take your sweet potato vine and you plant your sweet potato vine this way, it's going to be better for you because you're going to have all these little nodes that are coming out, and those will be potatoes all along there. Okay. All right, right, winter squash. I finally figured out how to grow winter squash. How many of us have been frustrated by the time frost was coming in September and you have a squash not that big?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the trick is they like it warm too, okay? So get your free black lumber wrap, get your bed made wherever you're going to have it. Mine's always in the same place. Get your holes dug in the fall. Put some fertilizer. I just bury kitchen compost in there or some chicken manure or whatever. Put that down in the hole so that it's getting ready, right? It's kind of the whole entire winter getting ready. But if you can't do that and you're starting right now, that's okay. Put some fertilizer in the hole. You've got your black plastic down that's heating the soil underneath. I use those wall of waters, but you don't have to because I just came across those. And start your seeds in about maybe May. Now, squash seeds do not like to be messed with. Plants, they do not like to be messed with. Their roots are really fragile. Okay, so some people have said, you have to direct sow the seeds. You cannot transplant squash. I tried that for years and I couldn't get a squash because it would take forever for it to germinate and come up, right? Because the nights are cold. So I just started putting them in pots. I do not transplant these 4 or 5 times. They go into a pot about this size, and then I put them into your garden, and that's it. Okay? So what happens is after the danger of frost is over, or if I have the wall of waters, if I have protection of some kind, like that cover there, I can put them out earlier than, middle of June. So I would just gently cradle the plant in my hand, between my fingers and gently tap it like this, okay? Remember, my hole is already prepared. And then I'm going to just gently put it down into the hole and just, cover it up a little bit. All right, so now you've got it there. Now add your protection. As soon as you put those in the ground, put your frost blanket over top. Or your wall of water, or your little mini greenhouse, or whatever you're going to do because they like it warm. So that's going to give them a great start. And if you do the wall of water or something like that, your plant will then start coming out the top of it, and then frost is over, right? No more frost, right? No more frost. So I'm going to get rid of that wall of water now, and I'm just going to let it grow. But I'm going to keep it covered. I'm going to keep that covered until I start seeing flowers, because it doesn't need pollinated. So keep it as warm as you possibly can. If you have a greenhouse, grow it in there. But most of us don't have gigantic 150-foot greenhouses where we just grow tons of squash. Some of us do, but. All right, so keep it covered until you start seeing flowers. Once you start seeing flowers, you need to uncover it so that it can be pollinated. Then, around mid-August, right before your frost comes, about 2 weeks before frost, go around and clip off all the teeny tiny little fruits. I know it's heartbreaking. It's very hard to do because you're looking at that little squash thinking, oh, that's going to be big one day. Yes, one day. So clip all of those off so that all of the energy of the plant then is going to the bigger ones that are already there. And then cover it back up again and leave it covered until you are going to harvest it. Okay? That's how you get squash. So here's a few more crops here. If you're not growing blueberries yet, you need to. They take around 6 or 7 years to really get going. So yeah, start them yesterday. And then beets and turnips, these all keep really well. So celery we went over. Corn, you can do corn. Make sure you're growing the shortest day corn that you can find. I think there's 63 or 65 day corn. And it's worth it if you can do it because it tastes homegrown corn. And again, start them in flats like the green beans, and then transplant them out into your garden when they're about 6-8 inches tall. And they are heavy feeders too. So make sure you've got some good compost or manures or fertilizers of some kind in there for the corn. And then how do you know to harvest it? Well, the little, what are they called? Silk turns brown and dies. And then you can open it just a little bit, and if you can poke your fingernail into one of the kernels of corn and the milk comes out, it's like a white milky substance, and it's ready. If you let it go too far, it'll be like field corn, you'll have to feed it to a cow or something. All right, and then if you're not doing Jerusalem artichokes, also known as sunchokes, I recommend those because you can leave them in the ground. You can even have to harvest them. And they spread. They're like little potatoes, weird-looking potatoes. And they have the prettiest flowers on the top, like sunflowers. So those are worth growing. And of course, raspberries and strawberries, they come back every year. There's lots of different methods of saving seed. I can't get into it too much, but that's a good book. Recommend Seed to Seed. These are white spear winter onions. And if you get, I think I have a few out there. I'm not sure if Johnny's has them anymore, but it's a winter onion. And they actually will grow all year long. If you let it go to seed just like that and drop the full black seed, you will have onion seed for the rest of your life. I'm serious. And you will have onions to eat every single day. They will spread, and then you can just dig them up like you saw me do on the video and move them wherever you want them. So there's the wet seeded type where you have to wash them, let them dry. That would be like pumpkin, you know, you're cleaning the seeds out. And then make sure you're labeling your seeds. Tomato seed, you have to let them ferment and rot, and then you peel the mold off the top of it, and you can save the tomato seeds that way. It's a chemical process that it goes through. Dry seeded is just where you're letting it go to flour, and then you can just let them spread all over your garden if you want to, or you can clip the flower head off and keep it in a paper bag and keep the seeds that way if you'd like to. So if you have different plants you're wondering about how do I save the seed for this or whatever, you can come and ask me. But that book that was recommended on there is really good for seed saving. Again, make sure you're labeling and keeping them cool and dry, and they should last you for years and years and years. So if you don't have an outdoor space, this is just some ideas that I'd like to include on there for some people that, you know, you don't have a garden. Start collecting containers and just start growing stuff on your patio or on your deck. It's amazing how much food you can grow vertically, like a shoe rack full of lettuce, you know, bags, cheese bottles, whatever you have. Just start getting creative. So that is the end of Gardening 101. And what I want to do is just take some questions. And then if some of you need a break, we're just going to do while questions. You can take a 5-minute break, but I'm going to jump right into part 2. So don't be too long. But who has questions about this part right here? Starting seeds or, yes?
The sweet potatoes, do you have a particular variety? Because I tried them a couple of times without potatoes.
Okay, she's asking about varieties. No, the ones that I have are the ones that I've grown, that are growing from. And then I will just go to, you know, Winco or wherever and just buy the yam or whatever that they have there. There's no particular variety. Some of them will sprout, some of them won't, so I'll usually try about 3 or 4 different kinds and just see which ones will. Yeah. Yes. Question?
I have a question about the sweet potatoes. I tried growing them last year, and I did have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I had potatoes about this big. Good. But when I opened them up, they had all these black spots.
Oh, weird. I don't know. Does anybody know the question? She had black spots inside her potatoes when she opened them up. Does anybody know what would cause that? I'm not sure about that.
Uneven watering.
Oh, somebody over here said uneven watering. Okay. I do know sweet potatoes like a lot of water. Yes, question.
I have 2 questions. One was that little white bag that you have seeds on when you.
Oh, that's just a plastic lid for a jar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the next one is.
I don't think there's Michael's.
The next one is about grasshoppers.
Okay, she's asking about grasshoppers. Chickens. I usually will let the chickens into the garden before I have them planted, and they'll kill most of the pests that are in there. And then if they free range around, they'll kill the pests all around the garden, around the outside. You can do spray, different types of spray. I've done diatomaceous earth before, and that helps. If you're not familiar with that, it's like a white powder, and that's all natural. You can put that on top of the plants. That helps. And then covers. Get those insect barrier covers. 0.55 ounce covers. That will help. Yes, question?
What about soaking your seeds before you plant them?
She's asking about soaking them. I never soak mine. I've heard some people say you have to soak, is it sweet peas or whatever? I never do. I never soak my beans either. I don't know if you have to do that or not. I don't. Any other? Yes, question?
What about using the plant like this?
You mean on the greenhouse, the plastic on the greenhouse?
Like you have the water bottle and have.
Oh, I don't know about she's asking if the chemicals would leach from the plastic water bottles into, there might be some, but you know what, it's not, so you're talking about like if I started seeds in here, they're not in extreme amounts of heat, they're just sitting in a sunny window. So I would say, like, if this was in a stove or something, and it was a lot of heat was going to it, I'd say chemicals would be coming off of it. But, you know, I'm not a scientist, so I cannot say for sure on that. There was a in there.
When you transplant your seedlings, do you always transplant with potted soil, or do you ever just use the soil from the garden?
Okay, so when I transplant the seedlings, I'm using the potting mix that I bought, because I want to give them a really good start. Yeah, each new pot that I put them in is potting soil mix. You can make your own. You can go online and look how to make your own and what you need to add to it and all that. You can. I'm just busy, so I have to take some shortcuts somewhere. Were there any other questions on this? Yes.
The seeds for the onions that you put out and you set them up and put them in the greenhouse, did you start those in the little plants first, or did you just put them directly into the...
Okay, she's asking about the seeds that I transplanted into the greenhouse. I direct sowed those seeds into the garden. Yeah, I just took the packet and whoosh, down the row.
I tried to allow my onion to overwinter outside, and it'll do okay until it gets warm in the spring, and then it goes to seed. So
they might be the wrong type of onion. So if you're trying to grow an onion that you can actually eat during the winter, you need to be growing the winter onions. Like the white spear onion, you can't do big bulb onions in the winter time because the days are too short. You can only grow big bulb onions in the summer when we have long days, and that's why you need the long day onions. But if you do the winter onions, like the green spear that I have out there, and there may be others now, that's just something that's popping in my mind. You will have small bunching onions all winter. They're not going to be huge, you know, they're the little green salad onions.
So are you using your short day onions when you're taking them into the greenhouse?
No, those are long day.
They're all long day.
Yep. They're just overwintering though. I'm not trying to eat them in the winter. They're just sitting there waiting for spring. Okay, another question.
Could you name the winter onions again?
White spear.
White spear?
Yeah, white spear. Okay. One more question?
Yeah, I noticed that you had a seminar recorded. Is it very similar to these?
Yes. The seminars that you see online on YouTube are the exact same thing I'm doing right now. I mean, plus or minus a few words. I'm going to say it in my sleep now. Yeah, some of the places where I do it will record it for me, and then they'll send me the recording, and then I can put it online, or they'll put it online. So yeah, you can go back and stop it and pause it as many times as you want to and do the same thing again. Yeah. All right, so let's get into part 2 because I want to make sure we have enough time. There may be a few more people out there. I don't know if somebody wants to make an announcement about we're going into part 2. So how in the world did I ever start winter gardening? Well, at the end of the season, was kind of sad that I had to hang up my hoe and be done. Some people just say, oh, I'm so glad to be done. But in my mind, I kept thinking, I want to be able to still grow food. And for me, it's therapeutic to have plants growing. Okay? So I started to search how to do winter gardening in the cold north, right? How do you do this? And number one, I heard some people say, you have to have a lot of money because you have to build this big, expensive greenhouse, and you have to heat it, and you have to do da-da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, I could never do any of that. So when I started searching then, I came across a man named Elliot Coleman, which some of you probably already heard of. And so I ordered all of his books, and I started looking at his books and the pictures, and I thought, he's doing exactly what I want to do. He's on the same 44th parallel line as we are. And he is doing it with an unheated greenhouse. I said, that's great. Okay, so this is his motto here, unheated, uninsulated, unbelievable. And that's what it is. And so what you're going to see here is most of these pictures were taken the first year we did this, about 8 years ago, because I just wanted to document it. I couldn't believe it. And then when people saw that what we were doing, like I said, I got calls. You have to teach people how to do it. So I'm just going to go through this and I'll show you the pictures that I have and how to do this. 3 things to keep in mind, okay? Number one, grow the right things. Make sure you're actually growing winter plants. Don't try to grow tomatoes. It's not going to work. You'll be frustrated. Okay? Number two, succession planting. Make sure that you keep in mind, and this is crazy, the time that it takes for a plant to mature in a winter garden is triple the amount of time. Okay? So if you're trying to grow turnips and it says 50 days, multiply that by 3, it's 150 days. So the next thing you need is greenhouse plastic. Make sure you get the good stuff. I can tell you by experience. Get 6 mil, okay? And if you can, get it with coating. It's an anti-drift coating because otherwise you'll be walking into a rainforest all the time. So spend a little extra money, get the good stuff, and then you need the fabric here, which I'll go over that again too. So what can you grow? So this is a list of every single thing that I grew the very first year. Because I found it in the book. And it actually grew. It was just amazing. I had so much food it wasn't even funny. I was giving it away to everybody. And so the dates there in the parentheses is the math that I did according to where I was and when it needed to go in the ground. And these are all direct sowed, by the way. Okay, none of this stuff is transplanted. This is direct sowed into your greenhouse, starting in July. Starting in July so that you can eat it all winter. It's crazy, but remember, triples. The time triples. Okay? So, keep in mind that you need to be doing succession planting. You don't want to put everything in there all at one time because everything will be ready at the exact same time, and that's not good. I do every 2 weeks. I start in July, and I end, I don't do October anymore. I end at the end of September, but if you are in a warmer climate, you could probably do mid-October. So I just, rule of thumb, I start in the middle of July, and then I go every 2 weeks after that. I put in some more plants. All right, so that's what you need to keep in mind to get started. Okay? That's why I'm teaching you this class early, so you can be thinking in your mind about the summer. So now I'm going to show you how we built this.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So in that winter greenhouse, is it in the ground or do you have like raised beds in there?
So when we first started right here, that's just dirt, literally, that I just hauled in from the forest in the wheelbarrow.
Okay.
So it may have been like 2-3 inches above the ground. But now that I've been doing it for so many years, I've now boxed in the beds with boards, so it's deeper now.
Okay.
But, you know, the more you work the soil and dig it and add compost and things, the deeper it'll get and the better it'll get. But the first year, this is what it looked like. Okay? And we're busy people, so we didn't have time to build right away. But I knew that these plants needed to be in the ground in July, or I wouldn't be having anything to eat in the wintertime. So I went ahead and started planting, as you can see, before it was completely done. So we started out with a 20 by 12. And then we just framed it in with some lumber. I can't remember. I think it was a 10-inch board, maybe 2 by 10. I can't remember. But use what you have, use what you can get, and just frame it in there at the base. And then this right here is the secret to the snow load. You literally take rebar and stick it inside the gray conduit, and that's what makes it so strong. So it was a 20-foot piece of rebar stuck inside 2 conduits. So 2 10-foot conduits stuck together made a 20-foot span, and then the 20-foot rebar went into that. So one person would hold it inside the frame while the other person bends it down and put it on the inside of the frame, and then we clamp it in there just like that. I think we put them every 2.5 feet or so. It kind of depends on your snow. If you don't have as much snow, you can probably be further apart. But if you have lots of snow, you're going to want them closer together. And then we put one across the top. There's no rebar in the top, just conduit. Okay, and that kept the ribs there spaced evenly apart. And so the 20-foot span made a 6-foot tall ceiling. It's not really tall. You can remedy that by putting conduit up higher on the sides, maybe building your base higher or digging down, but it's not too bad. You know, actually that's what I did. I dug down into the greenhouse just a few inches. So I set down into it just to give myself a little bit more headspace. So this is what the front door looked like here. Not fancy. But what we did was we just went to Les Schwab and got some old tire tubes and cut them apart and used those for tying the frame to the conduit. So that's what the frame looked like. So the metal bars that are going across the sides there, we did not need, we took them out. We thought we would need that for extra support, and we didn't. It was actually making more shade on the plants. So that's not necessary. But this is the only picture I have of the frame without plastic on it. So we covered the two ends first. We clipped it at the top and pulled it down tight and put some wood furring strips in there with some finishing nails, and that has worked out really well. And this is how we attached it. I'll show you the clips here. So these are just 1-inch water pipe. You can buy these, okay? You can buy clips, actual glue house clips. But this is what we had laying around. So we just use that and we cut a slit in there like that. And so this is a 2-person job, by the way. Especially when you're first starting and this is not bendable. Somebody has to hold this on there. And this just adds friction so that these are not popping off and so that it's not putting holes in your plastic, because these edges on here are sharp. So if somebody holds this while somebody else puts that over top of it, and that holds the plastic. And I would recommend too, after doing this for so many years, that when you start getting really big snow loads in the middle of the night, like 2 feet in the middle of the night, sometimes those can pop off and then you lose them. So if you don't want that to happen, get some of those Harbor Freight clips, those heavy metal clips, clamps, whatever, and put them, at least a couple of them on the top to hold. Okay, this is how we did the back end of it. It's called a half moon vent, just with some door hinges so that it could open all the way if I wanted it to. So that's what that looks like. And then we put the plastic over the whole entire thing there. And we put the framing brackets on there just to hold the plastic, because otherwise it'll just roll out into your garden all over the place. So that just holds your crank. So this is what we've done since then. Like I said, this was many, many years ago, and we learn something new every year. So I've since enclosed the beds, as you can see there, with boards. And then we did put a beam across the top, and we cemented, I don't remember if it was 4x4, 6x4, 6x6, I don't remember. I think a 4x4 post is cemented in the ground. And that's for my peace of mind, really, because sometimes you go, like I say, if you get 2 feet of snow in the middle of the night, you go up there in your greenhouse and doing this. It never came down on us, and it never collapsed, and it lasted a good 3 years like that with no problems. But after a while, I just said, if we could do this, then I could tie my tomatoes up to it, and I got a support beam in there too. So if you can do that, do it.
How long is your greenhouse?
Right now it's 24 by 12. It started out as 20. And then the netting is to keep the cat out. Yeah, that's why I did that. And then we added an automatic vent, bottom right-hand picture, and these are wonderful because it has wax in that black part that heats up during the day and opens it automatically. When it cools down, it closes it automatically. So you don't have to babysit your vent. Okay. And then we took out the white PVC because it just cracks and breaks. But that's what we had at the time, and so now we've upgraded it to metal. And so you can see we put an elbow in there with the handle slides in and out. You build a hole in there so that the handle goes like this, so that you can roll it up as far as you want. Push the handle in, and it'll stop wherever you want it to. So if you only want to vent it 6 inches, roll it there. If you want to go all the way over, you can do that. So that's been nice. Make sure you have some type of a fan in there going, if you want to avoid having aphids and spider mites and stuff like that. Have some. This is an old truck fan that's just hooked up to a solar panel, so it just runs when the sun's out, which is perfect. And then we added some string to the side. I know it's hard to see, but these little eyelet screws about every 4 feet. So we just took the string back and forth like shoelaces, and then went back the other way like this. And the string holds the plastic so that when you're, rolling it up and down, it's not flopping all like this, and then the wind is not blowing it around. So the string has been nice. Just get some really good, thick string too. All right, so that's how we built it. So now let's go back to how this works. So you need to have your plastic on by maybe middle of October. So this is why I tell whoever the gardener is in your family, go ahead, even if you don't have time to build it yet, go ahead and get your plants planted, get them out there, get them going, because you do not have to have it covered until October. You've got plenty of time to think about this. outside. Now you've tricked your plants into thinking they're another zone and a half south. So now they've gone from zone 5 to zone 6.5 just by adding that one layer of plastic. Okay, so that's October. So November comes around, and this is the best part. You don't have to water. You don't have to do anything. You just go and harvest. You don't water in the winter. Okay? People say, I'm tired, I don't want to do any work. But look, if you just get your stuff done in the summertime, you can take a winter off. All you have to do is go up there and sit in the sun in your hammock, and it's like 7 in there, and pick yourself a salad. You know, you've got 8 feet of snow outside. So this is the next secret right here. These are called wickets. So this is number 9 wire. It comes on a big roll also. Okay? Cut them to the width of your bed, and then the length of the legs, these need to be 12 inches above your soil level. Not above your plant, above your soil. Okay? So if your soil is right here, your plant might be here, that's fine, but your soil is here, so your wicket needs to be up here. And make sure that you're putting these about every 2 or 3 feet in the ground before it freezes. Okay? I've learned that too. Before it freezes. You can get a drill for sure. Okay, so this is the fabric I've been telling you about. And you're welcome to come up here later and take a picture of it if you want to. But it's called AG19 fabric, and this is 0.55 ounces. This is the frost blanket. So this is the next secret to winter gardening. Okay? You're going to cover up your plants and put them to bed. And they stay under this until about this time of year, and you can take them off. And people always ask me, why don't you just get a heavier fabric? Why this one? And so I just went back and read what Elliot said. And he had done different trials, and he said the lightweight versus the heavyweight fabric, it only adds 2 more degrees of warmth. But it lets in 50% light, and which leads to more soil freezing. So that's why you stick with the AG19. So once you add that in, now your plants under there are tricked into thinking they're another zone and a half south. So now they think they're in zone 8. It's amazing. I don't know who ever thought of this. This is just amazing. So here's November. Not a sunny day, but it was 21 outside and 53 in the greenhouse.
Wow.
No heat, guys. There's no heat. There's no insulation. There's no tricks about this, okay? So imagine what it probably was underneath the frost blanket. Probably 65. So here's another thing you need to keep in mind. Harvest your vegetables up there after everything is thawed out. So if you go up there early in the morning, your covers are going to be frozen solid. And your plants will probably be frozen solid sometimes. So wait until everything thaws out. Trust me, I have tried to go up there and blow on it. I'm trying to get my salad so I can get going for the day. But you can't because they'll rip and they'll tear. It's not worth it. So wait till everything heats up a little bit and thaws out in there. And then do your harvest like maybe once a week. Harvest everything you need for that week. Put it in your fridge or whatever, and you don't have to go there until next week. And then if you're experiencing very cold temperatures like we've had lately, go up there and throw another cover. You can either throw another one of these over, or I just keep a big pile of old sheets up there, and I just throw sheets over top of everything. And don't take them off unless it's sunny during the day. Let them ventilate. But otherwise, leave them on there until the cold temperatures are gone, and then take them off right away so they can ventilate again. And by the way, if it does start warming up in there, like in the wintertime, sometimes it can be 70 degrees or more. They don't like the heat. Okay? Remember, these are winter plants. I have had some winter plants go to seed because they don't like the heat right away. So uncover them. Go up there and sit in your hammock and uncover the plants and take a book for an hour. You know, let them ventilate. Open the door if you have to. Turn the fan on if you have to. Cool it down. Make sure that you are removing snow. Okay? Remember, in the wintertime, what they need is the light. They don't need the heat, they need the light. Now, do you run artificial lights? No. I've never run artificial lights. Don't start getting dependent on all these other things, okay? Keep it simple. When telling you what works. Just keep it simple. So if you get a lot of snow, make sure you're removing that snow. Also, do not let it pile up beside the greenhouse because that will make a shadow down here where your plants actually are. If the sun is coming this way and you've got a pile of snow this tall beside your greenhouse, where's your plant? Way down here. Where's the light hitting? Over here somewhere. Okay, so if you have a snow blower or whatever, some good strong kids, get those things that are willing. Okay, these are not mine, but these are Elliot's temperatures. I just thought that was interesting. Look how cold it was outside, and he actually checked under the fabric. I haven't done that yet, but it's kind of cool, isn't it? Just amazing. So, questions that people ask me. Why don't you sow after October? Because there's just not enough time for it to get to a good size to make it worthwhile. And since it is a winter plant and it likes it cold, even if you tried to sow a seed after October, say November, it would just kind of sit there and maybe not do very much. But as soon as February, March hit and those long days come back again, guess what? It's going to take off, but it'll go to seed and flower right away because it doesn't like the heat. All right, and then people ask me too about having 2 layers of plastic. Okay, number one, the cost. Because plastic is one of the most expensive things you're going to have to buy for doing this, okay? And then it reduces your light by 10%. That's a lot in the winter time. And by the way, if you're just starting out trying to figure out how do I build this or where do I build it, make sure that the longest side of your greenhouse is facing south, okay? And go out, it's kind of late now, but you'll get an idea this time of year. Go out and see where your sun is hitting. If you have a lot of tall trees in your yard, go out and figure out where's the sun hitting right now in the winter time. That's where your greenhouse needs to be. Don't put it right underneath a bunch of trees where the sun can't get to it. Put it far enough back so that when the sun comes over the trees, it can still hit that southern side. Okay? And also if you have to use a blower, if you do 2 layers of plastic, and then you have to depend on electricity to keep that moist. And then people have asked me too about putting cold frames, you know, the wooden frames, inside the greenhouse. So it's not a good use of space, it's very expensive, and it doesn't ventilate. You would have to go in there every day and prop the top of those cold frames open to get ventilation to your plants so they'll all just drop. So these ventilate. Okay? And they're much cheaper. You can get, well, I don't know, it's been a while since I bought it, but I think these are around $20 now. And they'll last you for years and years. Okay, so if you can't build one like that, you can build one like this. Go online and look. This is like the newest rage. Everybody's doing this, it seems like. You have a little tiny space, get a cowl panel and bend it. Put a little frame around the bottom, put a little door in there, okay? But I will tell you, I have a neighbor that did this and she said hers came down. Too much snow. So when you know that there's a bunch of snow coming, or even before winter hits, just take some 4x4 posts and pop it in the middle and sleep on that. And it'll be fine. She said she did that the next year and it worked just fine. Some more ideas here. That picture there on the bottom left is actually from one of Elliot's books. So you can grow outside in the wintertime just like that. Just make sure you're ventilating, okay? So let's go through the months here. Because people used to ask me, do you only use your greenhouse just for winter growing? The first year I did because I didn't know any different. Okay, but like I said, every year you learn a little bit more. So I'm going to show you every month how to use your greenhouse year-round, how to have food year-round all the time, fresh food. So this is what it looks like there in January. So what I do now is I have one bed, that's the southernmost bed, that is just for my winter plants. That's it. And that bed right there is only open in June. Otherwise, there's something always growing in it. Okay? So that's the one that you're looking at there on the left side. On the top right-hand side, I'm showing you the center bed. That is where the carrots are, and that's where I used to put my celery until this year, but I will from now on always put my celery there. And the carrots are always there, already there with the tomatoes. When the tomatoes are done, obviously you're pulling them out or cutting them off and then putting your celery in there. So do you see how you're using that bed now for other things? You still have your winter stuff going on there. Okay? And then the bottom right-hand picture are different lettuces. Sometimes I just experiment. I wonder how these will do, you know, and that's what that is. That's from this year. Again, that's the center bed at the very end where the peppers are. I'll show you that, but we'll get to that. So what's going on in January? I'm starting my herbs and my celery and lettuce and spinach and sweet potato slips. That's in January. In the house, okay, for corn. And then February, it's just a sample of what's growing in there. Starting eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes if you haven't already for transplanting into your greenhouse. February, you're going to want to take all the covers off. So the picture on the left, that's the first year. Like I said, I grew way too much. Isn't that amazing? That's February, you guys. That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, wow. It's a miracle. Okay, and then March. See the snow outside? Extremely hot inside. That's why it's ventilating. That's why I've rolled up the side there about a foot to get some air in there. And the covers are off too. Hopefully we won't have a March like that. Who knows? Starting other seeds there in March inside your house to transplant outside. These are the winter squashes that I was telling you about. I just start them in the greenhouse. And then I transplant them out to their sunny location. This is April and May kind of go together, so I didn't really separate them out. But you can see the center bed there, that was, I don't know, maybe the second year, third year, I don't remember, but I didn't know what to do with it at that time. I didn't have carrots and stuff growing in there yet, so I was just kind of getting it ready to put stuff in. But you can see that that frontmost bed there, that's just the winter stuff growing in there at that time. But look at that harvest. I mean, that's a lot of food right there. And see, you're learning from my mistakes, so now you know that you can do all these other things too, not just have, you know, these greens growing. And then on the right-hand side, that's my plants. You've already seen that picture, but that's them hardening off. Okay, getting ready to go into the ground in the center bed. Okay, just you can see most things. There's still a few things growing there in the winter bed, not a lot, but most of it has gone to seed. And you can see the flats, the trays there of green beans that are growing. And you can't really see the corn, but that's how I start those in the spaces where the winter plants are dead and gone. I'll pull them out and compost them, and then I've got spaces in for the beans and corn to grow. Okay, we're still in April and May, and this is when you're getting your flats of beans and peas ready to go, and cucumbers and things like that. And then June. So you can see what a mess that bed looks like. So what I usually do is just take one plant and tie it up to, you know, one of the hoops and save the seeds from one. You don't need all of those. Okay, and I'll pull the rest of them out. But at least you can see what it looks like. Okay, so I've already got peppers in there and zucchini, different things. Usually I'll have little cherry tomatoes too. Okay, and then just another picture of June. Start moving stuff out. Okay, your green beans are now in the ground. Your corn is in the ground. You've moved your squash out. And your winter bed now should be empty. You're starting to take everything out of there so that you can add more compost and things to it and get it ready for July. And you're saving seeds, June and July, in your greenhouse. Okay, so here is July, maybe middle of July, depending on your climate. Do your first planting. So you can see there on the left-hand side that I have those little black rows there. That's where I have done the first plantings. And I don't remember. Some of them are coming up there, so it might have been the second planting. I don't know. But what I wanted to show you about this is when I first started doing this, I used to do all the spinach together down here. I'd do a row of spinach, you know, and then a row of kale here, and then I'd do a row of collards or whatever, and then a row of onions. But the problem with that is that everything then was in, you know, I had to move the cover off of the whole entire bed every time I wanted to get enough for a salad. So what I do now is I put everything together in one spot. So if you can see the picture on the right, I do some spinach and some lettuce, and I think that's mizuna, and I don't remember, anyway, an onion. So I'll do a variety of everything that I want in that 1 4 to 5 foot spot. And then 2 weeks later, I go down here and I do the exact same thing again. So I do that all the way down the row until the end of September. And the nice thing about doing it that way is when you go up there to harvest, you only have to move the cover off of that one little section. Because it's kind of a pain, especially if it's frozen or whatever, unclip every single clip and all of that. But everything's right there that you need in that one place. And then when you've harvested all of that, then the next time you just move the cover off of that one little section here. Okay? So August. Just going to show you what's going on in there in August. In August, you're sowing your onions. If you're going to overwinter onions in your garden outside, that's when you start them. And also, you can be starting lettuce, like I showed you the picture of the lettuce bed, under your pepper plants. So, your peppers are, I don't know, maybe 2-3 feet tall, and just sprinkle seeds under them. They'll get watered when you water your pepper plants. They'll come up, and then when your peppers are done, don't rip them out of the ground, okay, because they're all lettuce seeds. Cut them off at the ground level and let that lettuce grow up. And now you've got a whole bed of lettuce for winter. Covered. In September, 2 more plantings in September. Aren't those beautiful? I mean, usually everything's dead, right? In September, look at the fall. October. Okay, November. Yeah, we had a crazy winter, didn't we? We had snow, 2 months early in the state? But you know what? This is just, to me, this is just amazing. This is just a miracle. Because no matter how much snow you have outside, you can walk in there to your own little private garden and eat and you have food. I mean, if you really think, go back to Gardening 101, okay, the first part, and think, you've got your potatoes stored up, you've got cabbages stored up, you've got your carrots in the ground, you've got celery, you've got onions that always come back. Now you've got all these greens. You can keep your turnips in the ground, you can keep your beets in the ground. What am I missing here? Your green beans you could freeze or can. I mean, that is a lot of food. I don't buy very much anymore because I've finally figured out how to kind of do this. So people ask me all the time, are they growing? Or are they just staying alive? So I went back and did some research. So this is the same year. That's 2016, 2017, same 6-month period of time during the coldest months of the year. Same beds, okay? So you can see. So are they growing? They are. It's a miracle. Now that's slow, right? Because the time is triple the amount of time that it would normally take. But there is some growth. Now when it gets extremely cold, you will probably have some losses. And you can go up there and you can just trim the dead stuff off. And usually when you get a warmer sunnier day, it'll start coming back. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But you know what? Look what you can do. This is just a miracle. And I think that that's why I am so excited to go around and share this with people, because most people don't know you can do this. And people have asked me, you know, what if I was to add heat, or what if I was to dig 4 feet down in the ground, or put these pipes underneath and blow warm air? You can do all that if you want to. You might be able to have a little bit more of a growing season in there, and obviously it'll stay warmer for you. But this is just the easiest, simplest way to do it, and cost effective. Somebody was asking me how much did it cost. Well, the first year that we did this, it cost $500. That was with everything. The seeds, the plastic, everything. And then I figured it out this year, it would be around $1,000. That's cheap, I think, because if you go online and try to buy a greenhouse kit, thousands and thousands of dollars. And then it's not even everything you need. Usually it doesn't come with the door either. So, let me take some questions on this. That was a lot of information, I realize, and I went really fast, but who has questions on this part? Yes?
That states 8 from the 18 degrees warmer than the spring when it comes to sun. And I get these carrots over winter, but when I went out to dig them, they had split. Have you ever had that?
I have had some, and sometimes they could be already split before winter even comes from not watering, either overwatering or not watering enough. And then sometimes the carrot, they'll be frozen in the ground. So you can cover them too if you want to. And you might have to wait until a warmer, sunnier day when you can actually get them out of the ground. But mine have been all right. Sometimes I just have to chisel them out if I really, really want them really bad. Otherwise, I'll just wait and I'll go and I'll just harvest a whole bunch of them at one time and put them in the refrigerator so I've got them. Yes?
Do you have any Trammell or special considerations in the greenhouse or underground?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Get a cat. She's asking about rodents, underground critters. We used to have the gophers and stuff, and so we got a cat. We did get rid of them in various different ways that I can talk about with you. But traps work pretty well, and I've also heard of some people burying gopher wire. Do you know what gopher wire is? Are you familiar with that at all? You can buy gopher wire to bury with your fruit trees if you haven't planted them yet. And the roots of the fruit trees will actually push through the gopher wire. It's amazing. But make sure you're burying it at least 3 feet because they will burrow down. So some people will bury gopher wire under all of their beds. And then I've heard of some people taking glass, breaking up old windows and stuff, and putting glass over top of that, and then they can't come up through that. But yeah, the cat really has been the best bet for us. He keeps everything away. I haven't had any gophers at all in about 6 years.
How do you do cats and chickens?
Ours don't bother each other. Maybe you need to adopt a new cat. Spray him with the hose every time he goes after chickens. Yes.
Do you prefer in-ground in your garden, in your greenhouse, instead of grow boxes?
I've done both. The grow boxes are nice because they're higher up and they're easier to get to.
You can put wire on the bottom.
Yeah, you can put wire underneath of them. They do take more soil, so you'd have to fill them somehow. But they do thaw out earlier than the soil in the garden, which is nice. You can get working in there a lot faster. I don't know, but if you can plant your stuff down into the ground too, there is an insulating factor there. Especially in the greenhouse, people ask me, what if I have raised beds that are, I have arthritis or whatever, and my beds are up here, and there's nothing underneath. I don't have experience with that, but I can suggest maybe putting some type of really thick insulation board or something underneath, or straw bales underneath to try to insulate that, because in the winter, when you're planting direct sow into the ground, that's your insulating factor, is that earth to the ground. So if it's just exposed in the box, I'm not sure how it would be. But if you're doing a bunch of pots, some people have tried that, I would say the same thing. I would either cover the pots with dirt or put some type of foam insulation or something around them to try to insulate the plants a little bit. But of course, then you still have to use these covers too. Any other questions on this part? Yes.
So when you're talking about overwintering, like carrots, for instance, are you in the greenhouse?
Yes. They are still in the ground. I think the carrots in the ground, that's how I overwinter them now. Some people just leave them out in their garden and they just remove the snow and dig them up that way, but I can't do that. Too much snow. And they're like, where does this thing go? Never sent you the snow. Where's the carrots? Anybody else have questions on that? Wow, okay, very good. Was it overwhelming? I hope not. Inspiring, good. I hope so. It at least gets you starting to think a little bit outside the box and what you can do. It's amazing what you can do. And like I said, that list of plants that I had there that I grew, there are so many more now that you can grow. All you have to do is look in the catalog and it'll tell you winter plants. Or this grows well in the north, or whatever, and that's how you find new stuff. Okay. Are you guys okay if we just keep plowing through? going to go start on part 3. This is it. We have about half an hour. You can hang in there. But let me give you a little introduction here. So some of you might be aware or not aware, but anyway, I wrote this little book right here on edible plants for our area because I like to hike. And I didn't want to carry around a book that was like 6 inches thick that told me what I could eat in Florida. Okay, so that's why I wrote this. And then I started thinking, why not put these medicinal properties in here on how to use the plant and what it's good for. You know, if you get a headache and you're out on the trail, what can you use? And I've actually used this when a friend of mine had a really bad burn. She tripped over her boiling pot of water while we were backpacking and singed her whole ankle. We put her in the creek right away, and then I looked in here under burns in the back and found that you could use wild violets. So I found the Lord led me to a patch, and we made a poultice and stuck it on her ankle, and her ankle was fine. Absolutely fine. In the morning, we wrapped it in a plastic bag that we had with us. The only pink spot she had was about the size of a quarter on the very bottom of her foot that we had missed. So, and I've heard other testimonies. A lady down, I can't remember where she lives. Anyway, her house burned down last year. And she went back in to get her dog, and she had really bad burns. So somebody had showed her this book, and she looked at her name. She found out rose hips. She used rose hips on her face, and it took care of her burns. It's just amazing. I've heard other testimonies. But anyway, Brent, you can come on up here. I have a special guest, Brent, and I'm so thankful he's here. He is all the way from Bonners Ferry, Idaho, you guys. He drove all over the Flowery Trail. It's his first time here. I'm glad he's here. And they're supposed to have a microphone. You guys have a microphone for him? Maybe you can find that while I'm still introducing him. But he is a certified herbalist who knows a lot more about plants than I do. And so I decided to team up with him. I've been to some of his classes, and I said, how can we work together on this with your information, what you know, and what I'm doing? So he has his own company out there. You can go ask him for more information on herbs and things. And I started doing this little kit, which anybody is welcome to come look at. And it's the size of this, you can see. This is the herbal kit. So he has components to the kit. I have components to the kit. And what we're working on is trying to get people to think on how to help themselves with herbs. So he's going to talk about most of these that are in here. And we have labels out there on the table. I made up labels for each herb if you can't find it in your yard. And what we did was we chose herbs and plants that are local, that you can find easily. And here's how you use them. Here's how you dry them, or you turn them into a tincture or a glycerite, and then you put them in the kit so that you've got the stuff with you all the time. Okay? So that's our goal, is to help you with that while he's going through these. I'm going to give you his liver, so you can go through however you want. And he's going to get started on this. So Brent, thank you for being here. You go a long way.
Hello. Nice to see you folks today. There are many things in nature that you can find, identify and find and use herbally to help you with problems. But it's also nice to have go-tos that you really trust and know in your own garden. They don't take up a lot of space. And if a neighbor has a problem, bam, you know what to do. You can run and get it and mash up a poultice for them, or make salves with it, or tinctures. So there are many things that can be done. And yeah, I really appreciate what Dawn has done. It's excellent work. We came up with our own kit as well. It was a great big box. It was called the Home Herbal Kit or something like that. I forget. We had all kinds of different names. It was $200. Nobody's interested in a first aid kit that costs $200. Well, I understand that. I said, this isn't going to work. But we're trying to help other people so you can do it. Because you have things that you like to use, and we want to help you achieve that. So that's our purpose. And she's got a great setup here. And her daughter has some great stuff out there too that she makes. All right.
You can skip that.
Okay. But think in your mind, what can I put together? How can I do it? And it's easy to do. This takes a little time and a little money. Okay, Bearberry, Kinnikinnick, Uva Ursi, you probably heard it of one of those names. You go outside and you probably see it growing on your property somewhere. If you live out in the country. And it's green right now. It's under the snow and it's green. It just stays nice and green. You go out and pick those leaves. Typically, what I had mostly used this for was urinary tract infections or anything to do with urinary. It soothes, it heals, and also helps with infections. But as you can see, scurvy, headaches, diabetes, many things that it's used for, cuts and burns. And you can eat the berries. They come in summertime. They're a little bit mealy. But you can survive on them. That's all you had to eat. Sure. Burdock. How many of you have had your dogs come back from a walk and they've had furs stuck in the nape of their neck or wherever? Remember as kids, we'd have it in our coats and everything. Mom would just give us the dickens for it. But in Japan, they eat gobo, and that's the roots. It's very edible, it's very nutritious. It's very good for your liver. It's a good blood cleanser, blood purifier. So we encourage people to enjoy burdock root. The leaves can be used as well. The stalks are very bitter. So if you ever pull them and you mess with the stalks and then you inadvertently wipe your mouth or something, and you're like, ooh, what's that? It came from that. Very bitter. That's very good for the liver because it helps move the liver. And so also the things that you see up there is use of sweating, hemorrhoids, canker sores, healing wounds. Also, the seeds can be used for kidney infections as well. But you need to be careful with it. It's pretty heavy medicine.
How would they put that in kits? Like what form would the plant put it in?
It depends if you want nutrition. It depends if you want a blood purifier.
So like drying it, you probably just have it on hand, dry the plant.
Sure. Yeah, you could dry the leaf and do that, or you could dry the seeds, or you could have it as a staple to eat. It's the Japanese love it. Chamomile. Isn't that a pretty little flower? Chamomile, I usually use it to help dry up my sinuses. If I have like a cold or things like that, I drink it as a tea. It's a nice tea, very soothing. But hemorrhoids, sunburn, relief pain, eczema, cramps, colic, laxative, you name it. It's good for so many things. And you can mix with dandelion, service berries, for a tea.
Really just the flowers?
Just the flowers generally, yes. And the leaves you can do as well. Red clover, purple, white, or yellow. I really enjoy clovers as well. They are a blood purifier. So they're very helpful to clean your skin up. If you have a young person that might be dealing with acne, a lot of oil in their skin, I would give them this as a tea, and I would also give them burdock root capsules. And the burdock root capsules does clean the complexion right up, help dry the skin, help get rid of that excess oil production. Yeah, it really works well. This is anti-cancer. It's loaded with copper, and as you know, most of you don't have copper plumbing anymore. You have PEX or PVC probably, or CPVC. So, and some of you may still have the cast iron, or not the cast iron, but the metal stuff. But this is very good in your copper, and so I recommend it. If you have a copper deficiency, start using this as a tea or something for supplement. The first picking is usually the best. So you ought to just pick the harvested flowers And you're going to see when you pick the flowers, you're going to have little bitty green leaves on the flower. That's okay. But generally, you just use the flowers to make your teas, and they're very nice. Yeah.
They're good for burns too.
Very good for burns. Do you have experience you want to share?
Yeah, I keep a quart jar of clover handy because having a wood stove, you're always burning yourself on the Italian. So I literally just take that out, make a poultice of it, put it on the burn, and it takes away the pain immediately. And no redness, no pinkness anymore.
Okay. That is a common thread, things that God has made. It takes away the pain immediately or almost immediately. There's many plants that are helpful for burns for sure. This is my favorite. Comfrey. Comfrey is so healing. It's a self-proliferative. It's one of three. I know of three. Comfrey, aloe vera, and what comes in? I know it. Anyway, Comfrey, can I tell you a story about how to save my marriage? She's heard this several times. We're at this beautiful, it's a huge cottonwood tree. There's a big old branch hanging over a deep gorge, and there's a big rope hanging on it. And my wife was sitting over on the other side with my daughter, sitting there on a log, so pretty. And I was thinking, man, here's my chance. I'm going to swing across this gorge. I'm going to land behind her. I'm going to take her in my arms, and give her a double dip, and just wow her off her feet. She's going to say, this guy is the most romantic guy there is on earth. So here I start my journey. I get halfway across, and I thought, it's time to get into action. Get behind her, right? So when I land, I'm behind her. And she was coming really fast, I swing across. And I made one last ditch effort to spin around her, to land and back. And I put my knee right in her cheekbone. Oh. And she went, oh. I said, let me see. And already there's this huge purple loogie going, right? I knew I was in trouble. So I got her home, and then I went to where I knew a bunch of comfrey was growing. This was a big old place we had of comfrey. And I grabbed a whole bunch of it, and I brought it home, and I smashed it, and I squeezed it, and I pounded it, and I did whatever I could to bruise it. And I ended up putting it on like a poultice right on her face. And I wrapped her, she looked like a mummy, the poor girl. And I had it wrapped on, hold on her face. It was time for bed by then. She actually let me go to bed with her. It was amazing. I could sleep in the same bed. But in the morning, when we took that off of there, she says, there's no pain, there was no purple, and the swelling was down. So comfrey is awesome. Comfrey is great for bone, cartilage, or flesh. If you have a problem with any of those on your body, comfrey is kind of the go-to. Some people are allergic, and I have become allergic to it. Yeah, but it's still my favorite. But it'll make me itch. Anyway, it does all these many things. Look, I cut myself. I still use it on my hands. I work outside, so I get a lot of cuts. Or, it spreads when your fingers dry out. I make what I call super healing salve. It has comfrey in it. And I just put that on, and I just have what I dip my fingers down into. I left a piece of tape, and then I wrap it. So I have 4 pieces of paper tape, and I leave it on for a day or so. They're good, they're healed. And it works very good for that. I cut myself. I was sharpening a hoe. I had a hoe and a file, and I put a nice razor edge on it. Dum-Dum didn't have gloves on. But I cut this wide open. And when I see blood, I turn to mush. At least it's my blood, And anyway, when a friend was there, I'd never worked with comfrey before, except pulling it out of the garden saying, right? But now she gave me this comfrey salve that she made, and she put on that big old gag. It was just so when your nerves are cut like that, they're screaming at you, right? And she put it on, it was like 3 seconds later, it was like the pain was gone. I was like, wow, I took notice. So I love comfort. It really helps. Can I say enough about it? Broken bones, it works. There's a poultice, it will help heal. Women in Africa and the Philippines, I know firsthand, they drink it as a tea when they're having babies. It's a self-prolificative, it makes cells. So it helps babies grow in the womb. Yes, there is some, the FDA put some tests together, and I think they were rigged. Can't prove it, but they have some nasty things to say about comfrey. So if you don't want to ingest it, don't. But externally, it works wonderful. It really does. Don't need to take all your time on comfrey, but I just know that way. Medicinal. Echinacea. Well, most of us would use it to stimulate your immune system. You feel a bugaboo coming on, just start taking it and it'll rev up your immune system. All right? But did you know if you get bit by a snake or a brown recluse or a hobo spider or something like that, you should take a whole jar, a whole bottle of it, if it's tincture or if it's in capsule form, just down it. It will not kill you. And in fact, it will build up your own body's defense system against the, it's part of the venom that breaks down your skin tissue. Be like a puff-adder snake or a black widow or whatever. So it stops that from happening, so you don't lose skin. But also, you use charcoal or clay as well to take out that toxins. But in fact, snake bites, years ago, you heard about snake oil salesmen? Well, this is what it was. They sold echinacea. They say, you supply the snake, let it bite me, and it won't hurt me, because the guy would take echinacea. All right? And it would render the bite useless. So echinacea is some wonderful things. You want to pick your plants. You want the root, actually, is the best. It has most of the good things in it. But I would suggest you would wait till at least the end of the second year, if not the end of the third year, to enjoy that, because it just allows that root to grow up, to mature. And the best time to plant it was last year. You understand, right? So the same about the fruit trees. 10 years ago was the best time to plant it. So get on it.
You can buy these in the nursery known as kumquat.
Okay. Yeah, you have the Echinacea purpurea. It's very easy to grow, and most people have it growing in their flower beds. But also you have the angustifolia. And the angustifolia variety is the highest in the good things that help your immune system. Angustifolia, A-N-G, angustifolia. All right. It's hard to grow, though, so you need to starify it, or you need to either put it in your freezer or put it outside in the snow. Just let it sit there, because it needs to thaw and freeze a little bit to break your seed cover. It's great for all these good things. It's a winner. And in fact, you can even go to your purpurea, grow in your wife's flower or your mom's flower bed or whatever. Pull out the seeds in the fall time and chew on them. You'll have like it's almost like a metallic or a 9-volt battery stuck under your tongue type of feeling. You know how it is? They call it a buzz. When you eat that, or you chew it up, it gives you like a buzz in your tongue. That's how you know it's the real thing. If you get stuff from the herb store and it doesn't do that to your tongue, it's probably sawdust. Well, who knows? So you need to check for yourself to make sure it's the real thing. And that's the way you can check it. Yeah, it really works good. Elderberry. I can't say enough about elderberry. And you know where these trees grow, right? You know the trees, you probably stop and grab some every fall. Hopefully it's not too close to the road. Exhaust. But please harvest it. You either have the light blue ones like these, or you'll have the dark blue ones that are called this Sambuca sniper, right? And they both work very well. And the neat thing about this plant is ginger is the same way in how it deals with viruses. If you get a virus or you think you're getting a virus, either drink the juice of it or keep using make jelly. I got neighbors who say my kids never get sick because I always give them elderberry jelly or jam. So they're eating it all the time. But what it does for a virus, it stops the replication early on. So when this virus gets inside, it's trying to take over your body, and it's got some cells, and they're just proliferating, making these cells. Well, if you're using elderberry or fresh ginger root juice. So another way you can make ginger root juice, make about a couple gallons of it, use a pound of it, and make yourself some juice and drink that down for 3 days. It won't get a hold of you. The same way with elderberry. Elderberry stops that replication, so it gives your body time to get on top of it. And there was some bad PR about elderberries causing a storm, cytokine storm, right? But it does to a degree, but it doesn't do like what they said back when we had this bad bugaboo going around. It's beneficial. It's helpful. The way to stay on top of these things, stay on top of your immune system by using these things. Incorporate them into your system. You can use the flowers, you can use the fruit, the berries, you can use the leaves, you can use the bark, you can use the roots. Now, some people are very, it upsets their tummies and it may cause them to vomit. So the flowers don't seem to do that to anybody, so they usually have the flowers for kids. But you want to stay away from red or white elderberry. Don't mess with them. You don't want them. There are toxins in them. But the blues, the dark blues, and the light blues are good. Also, I recommend if you know someone that has a shaky disease, have them enjoy elderberry as a lifetime new ritual, and they'll be happy. Okay, plantain. Plantago major, Plantago minor. One has a wide leaf. This is Plantago major. Plantago minor has a narrow leaf. That if you look on the back of the leaf, you can see ribs going down. And if you tear across the leaf, you can't tear the ribs. You'll tear up one of the ribs. That's how you can tell. But everybody has this growing in the yard, probably next to your driveway. Maybe there's some trees. One a good thing for taking out infections, toxins, poisons, stings. We were with my daughter one time. My daughter and these kids were at a place called Eden Valley, and we were out for a nice walk, and it was a hot August day, it was dry, and the kids were messing around with a tree trunk. Well, pretty soon all their mouths were wide open. Yellow jackets were in the tree trunk. And all the kids got stung, and so we had a chorus going on. And I was like, what are you, right? So I look and I find there's these little bitty plantains growing along the road. And so I said, hey, parents. We gave them to all the parents and we had them chew it up. I said, chew this up and put it on your stings of your children. And after they did that, about a minute later, there was silence. Yeah, so it just pulls that venom right out, the toxins right out. So this is your best friend. There's so many stories about people having blood infection. You know, where you see the red mark coming up. Use plantain. Use lots of it. You can make a tea out of it for your sinuses. But as far as an infection, you want to get it on the site where the infection is, or this place where the snake bites you, or wherever. You know, you want to get it on there and then get it everywhere you can. This one man had his lymph nodes in his arm were really swollen. He couldn't put his arm down, and he had the red marks going up from here. So we know when it gets to your heart, curtains, right? Well, he started using plantain, and it pulled it out. It pulled the infection out. So I trust plantain. It really works well. When all these good things, it works well. St. John's wort. For you cattle ranchers, you may not appreciate this, because if your animals eat too much of this, they may get sunburned. It causes a photosensitivity when you take too much of it. But if you use it as a medicine, you'll be just fine. I like to make oils out of the flowers. You go out, and it'll be about the last of June or the 1st of July. All of the St. John's wort will be flowering. Just go out and pick all the flowers. And in fact, if you don't want to mess with just the flower, just start plucking the tops off. And you'll get some leaves and all the flowers. And you want to fill up a bag, or at least a jar. Good quart jar, not 2-quart jar. Take it home after it's full and fill it up with olive oil, a good olive oil. And let it sit. At least for 2 weeks, if not longer. That beautiful green olive oil will have turned a beautiful red. And that's the hypericums in that St. John's wort, and that's the healing. It helps people to be happy, that are depressed. So we recommend people to take this as a capsules. You can take the greens and the flowers to uplift your mood when you're going through some tough times, especially this time of year. But also, when you cut a nerve, there's nothing like St. John's wort oil. Meaning you make like an olive oil with St. John's wort flowers. And if you cut a nerve, when it burns, right? It's just, you put that on. Let's say you've lost your feeling now. It will grow back that nerve. The fastest of anything I know. It will grow back that nerve so you will regain feeling in that, wherever you cut.
Does it have to be topical or can you use it?
Topical for a cut is best. You want to apply it right to those tissues. You can take it, like I said, you can take it internally as well. It'll have a little different action, slower action, but to get right to the area, yeah, topical. Great for burns as well, sores and wounds. So whenever I see these growing, I let them grow. I don't even weed them down. I want them to grow. I want you to spread. I like this stuff. All right, stinging nettles. How many of the kids, you go out there and you've gotten in a stinging nettle and you've learned a lesson? Well, this is one of the best foods for nutrition, in spring nutrition. So go out there and pick them when they just first come up. They won't sting you. Their little hairs haven't developed yet. And you can go out and harvest a lot of the early greens and make a nice stew or a broth out of that. Very nutritious. Very nutritious. We love it to make a broth or like a soup base. Or my wife will mix up this kind of a green smoothie in the morning, and she'll throw in all kinds of things, and it'll be like, it's good. It's good. In fact, you know what? If you know where a bunch of this grows, don't cut it down. Don't spray it. You want to foster its growth. Look, you can go out and cut this, cut it off, it's about this high or so. Yeah, it'll sting you at that time. but you want to cut the top off, all the tops off. And so the next week you go out, or a week and a half, it'll have all these new tops with more growth. And you cut those off. And the next 2 weeks you go out, there'll be even more growth. That's food. That's food that will take you into June and July. Nutrition. Save it. Dry it. Use it for the summer or the winter months when you need some good nutrition and pick you up. That's what we do. Also, if you have a bunch of this, cut it for hay for your animals. Look, we're going into a time that you may not be able to get gas to operate your tractor. You might need some food for your animals. This is great food for your animals. That's what they used to do way back when. We need to read those old books way back when for what they did, because we're going back into that time, I believe.
What's the best way to dry that? Yeah.
Well, what I do is I have a rack above my stove. I have like 4 racks. And I just fill it up with leaves. That's how I dry it.
Only leaves?
Yeah, because the stem, you can do the stems. If they're the young stems, it's no problem. But look, they use these stems to make material, to make fabric, to make cordage. So the big ones are quite stringy and hard to chew on, you know. Yeah, so get the young stuff, and it'll be fine. Yeah. Yes, those are the seeds. And did you know that the seeds can be, if you let them mature, you can press them for oil for your lamps. Yeah, this is a win-win plant. It is good for so many good things. And it also helps you learn respect. Doesn't it? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So the ones that you dry, you want to use the new ones that don't have the new stuff on them, is that correct?
Well,
Dry them for your
yeah, when you dry it or you cook it, there's no more stain. It takes it away. And so I would recommend if you go out to harvest, you can go get some. It will get you, unless you have gloves on. And then still you might get hit with 1 or 2. You'll be all right. It doesn't last long. And if that's a big problem, they say you can actually take the leaf, chew it up, and put it on. So you got some, it'll take care of your little sting. So God took care of all these things in advance to help us out. And people use it for hair loss too, so you can put it on your hair, make the rinse. Most of us aren't vain enough to even care about it. You know, we got too many things to do, right? But they say it helps. It's also great for allergies. So make a tincture with it, and you could take care of your allergies that way. All right, moving on.
Are there stinging nettles and catnip that are different, or are they the same?
I don't think there's any stinging nettles in catnip.
No, are they the same thing?
Oh, it's a different plant, totally. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Mints always have square stems. Okay? So that's how you know a mint. Catnip included. Okay, wild lettuce. You've probably seen this growing in your wasteland, in the ditch somewhere. All right, and you probably had disdain for it. But don't have disdain for this plant. It's known as wild lettuce or prickly lettuce because underneath the leaves, on the underneath side, right along the stem, there'll be these little prickles sticking down. And they don't really hurt you until they're really dry or mature. Like on the stem, you try to pull it, and you'll get some in your finger, and you won't be too happy. But you can use this. Look, I'm not pushing drugs here, but this plant has opium in it. It's minuscule. But people use it to sedate themselves. People use it to calm themselves down. People use it for back pains. or pains after working all day, you have terrible back pain, go out and you want this plant, and let's say you can use the stem and the leaves, chop it up, dry it, or you can dry it and then chop it up, or use your wife's Vitamix. What? It takes care of it really fast? I didn't say that. But you heard me, right? All right. I actually broke one of my wife's blenders using roots. I was blending roots and it was too hard for it. But this won't hurt it, really. It won't. And so blend it up. Anyway, fill up a quart jar, about a quarter full of this herb, dried herb. And that's the stalk and the leaves. Pour boiling water over it. And then, when it's cool enough to drink, enjoy it. That's kind of a funny thing because it's bitter, right? It's not really enjoyable. You can put a little sweetener in it if you want. But try to swig it down as fast as you can. And you will notice that life has just gotten better. People that irritate you don't irritate you anymore. And that bad headache or that neck that you had just isn't there anymore. And life is better. So, God loves you. And He wants to help you. But it also helps to stimulate. If you're nursing a baby, it's going to help produce milk. So it's very good for that. It helps kids with ADD. So you got a grandkid that's a little intense. Just hold the little guy down and give him some. Here, Sammy, come here. Don't take it long, You can make a sweet glycerin out of it, tincture, and how about some nice sweet tincture? And he just gets nice. I think it's a winner.
Takes up yourself.
Yeah, there you go. Take it yourself. You're doing better. Okay. Are there any questions?
So the KDE is an example of nervous disorder. I was just going to ask what nervous disorders you can example.
You'll have to experiment. I'm not a doctor, I'm sorry. But if there's issues, it just makes things better. That is if you can get past the taste. So you don't have to worry about being addicted. Really, because it's bitter. It's got a bitter to it. All right. Yarrow is a winner. Everybody probably knows what yarrow looks like. It grows around your house, or in the woods, on the trail that you just walked on. And in fact, I can walk up behind my house, and this is still sticking above the snow in places. Yeah. So it's the last one. It's the last soldier to go down in the spring, just about. And it helps with toothaches. You can mix it with your cayenne. Holds us to stop bleeding, to heal wounds, toothaches, muscle pain, inflammation, ulcers, blood pressure, hemorrhoids. It's a winner. So another blessing, pretty blessing that God's given us. Talking about some other plants here. Cayenne pepper, which we talked about a little bit. I recommend everybody to grow some cayenne in their gardens because cayenne will stop bleeding. It should be in everybody's first aid kit. If you could have some cayenne tincture or at least some cayenne powder, it will stop outside bleeding. It will also stop hemorrhaging inside. I know midwives that use it. They make like a shock tea. And to make shock tea, you would make shepherd's purse and cayenne, which are both hemostatic. They stop bleeding. And they'll mix it with honey. And they'll give that to the mother who is losing blood and who is very tired. And it will give her some energy to keep pushing or whatever, and to deal with the bleeding that's going on. It'll help stop that bleeding. Also, indigestion, gives me indigestion, I tell you. I don't really like cayenne. I'm good. Well, let me tell you the story. My wife, I had her taking cayenne for her circulation system. She got some blood issues, heart issues. And so she was taking, we had habanero, that's 250 heating units, right? So she mixed it, put it in, and she was up to a quarter teaspoon. And I said, I came in, just for lunch. I had to get lunch yet. I said, it was cold outside, kind of cold in the house. I said, hey, no need for you to suffer alone. Make me some too. I'll drink it with you. Oh, honey, you don't have to. No. Bring it on, right? Just give me an eighth, though, because I haven't been working up to it. So she just put an eighth of a teaspoon in there. And I drank it. And it was like, oh no. Oh no, I messed up. So I went to the bathroom because I knew where it was going. It didn't come up. So I was there before the throne for a while, and I laid on my back. The pain, every breath. And my wife came in and she leaned over and she said, honey, is there anything I can do for you? I said, just leave me alone. But 20 minutes later, I felt great. So, cayenne won't hurt you, it'll just put you down maybe. But good stuff, and it really helps. I've cut myself, and I've sprinkled on the cuts that were really bleeding bad. And I did a little jig, but it stopped the bleeding very fast. Generally, they say within 10 seconds, it'll stop bleeding. Hawthorn berry. You can use hawthorn leaf, hawthorn berry, hawthorn bark. All right? Kidney disease, irregular heartbeat, insomnia. Most people use it for their heart. It is cardiac nutrition. If you have an issue with your heart, I would strongly recommend you get on hawthorn berry. Either take it in a capsule form, or take it as a tincture, or take it as a syrup. There's some nice, it does make a very nice tasting syrup. You use brandy to do it. But very nice, and it will help your heart. It helps my wife with her heart. She has arrhythmia, and it'll go too fast, or it'll skip pumps. This levels it out. Lobelia inflata. Now, lobelia isn't the nice lobelia that you get from your garden store, and it looks pretty in your bed. This one has a blue flower, and it's inflata. It's got to be inflata. This is an antispasmodic, and it should be in your first aid kit as well, because if someone is suffering from asthma, where their alveoli or bronchi is closing up and they can't get a breath, you want this stuff on hand so you can squirt it in their mouth. And it will relax the bronchi so they can breathe. I lost a friend before I knew about this stuff. He died from the very same thing. So, antispasmodic, whooping cough, fevers, sore throat. Now, it isn't a medic, so it induces vomiting in larger quantities. So you can take up to 10 to 20 drops, you'll be fine. But if you drink a cup of it or so, you will puke your toenails up. But better out than in, right? Yeah, get that stuff out. So it works. But lobelia is good medicine, and I recommend everybody to have it. It also helps with go through a lung issue. It works synergistically with other herbs to promote healing and to promote the action of the other herbs. Okay. Another one that's not up here is no. It's a different one. Licorice. Have you ever had licorice root? Not licorice candy, it's different. Licorice root has a nice, sweet taste to it. And licorice root will also synergistically work with other things, and it's antiviral, strongly recommended. It should be on this list. Anyway, we didn't get it on there. Okay, Oregon grape root. It's the root. Oregon grape. You can go out and eat Oregon grapes, and you will taste what makes it so good, and it's the berberine that's in it. Now, this is called poor man's golden seal. It does the same thing as golden seal does. It's the berberine in it that works. And it's usually the yellow that you'll see on the roots. You pull this plant up and you'll look at the roots, they'll have yellow underneath the dirt. And that's what you want. So just take the roots, wash them, and just grind them all up. I mean, you can scrape them if you want to, but there's no need to. You can get a high level of berberine from this. And berberine is very good for your mucous membranes, for your GI tract, okay, your stomach, your eyes. Anywhere there's mucous membrane, this is a wonderful thing to heal and to bring health to the area. Does anybody have Jethro Claus's Back to Eden book? It's a real fat book. Have you ever read it through? That's a task. I didn't do that for herbal school. That's a task. But he was a very successful herbalist. And that was his favorite herb was not this one, the golden seal. But this is the poor man's golden seal. Do you have a question? Oh, now you're going to ask you a question. Okay, pine. Does anybody know what a pine tree looks like? Are you sure? Look, we had medicine growing all around us. We had a lot of people that in the last couple of years came down with a very bad virus. And just by making a tea out of the needles, it kicked that bugaboo. All right? I can't go into too much detail, but it works. It has high vitamin C content as well. But I would use needles any day. And someone asked me what's the best one to use, the one that's closest to your house. That you can reach. Preferably a younger one, right? Come down, Grandma, it's not worth it. Anyway, I'm going to get to the top. Anyway, sorry, I had to say that. I was in the Philippines, and that's such a hospitable place. We went up in the mountains, and we visited this grandmother. She tied on her sundog, which is like a little sword, and barefoot, that woman climbed a coconut tree, climbed to the top of that coconut tree, cut down some young coconut, climbed down, brought it in, prepared it for us. Have you ever had young coconut in like a juice? Mm. You haven't eaten it, so you have that. It's like, that's wonderful. Anyway, that's what she did. Anyway, back to raspberries. Again, does anybody know what a raspberry looks like? Okay, the leaves are very good for your healing, so before fall comes, while you still have green leaves, maybe just after you've harvested the raspberries, go pick a bunch of leaves and dry them and save them for winter time. Very good for your young ladies in the house. Also good for young fellows, but especially good for young ladies. You know, they get kind of snarky. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever noticed? There's a little snarky age in there. And this will help with that snarkiness. And it just helps them grow to be wiser women when they grow up. Good for kidneys, liver veins, urinary tract, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, headaches, if it's miscarriage. Midwives use it all the time. So this is good medicine that's all around us. And it's within your reach. So I suggest plant in your garden what you don't see. If you don't have it in the immediate area, it's good to plant in your garden. Give it a place and use it and be blessed by it. Thank you.
If anybody has questions for Brent, you can go out and talk to him. He'll be out at his table. And I wanted to point out a little flyer that's in your folder about a plant walk. People ask me to come to their property and do private plant walks. I can't do it. I don't have the time. So a friend of mine volunteered her property, and so last year we did a plant walk. They have 160 acres south of Newport, and you're welcome to come. It's free. It's a survivalist event, and there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff there, like fire building and poultice making and shelter building and I don't know, all sorts of stuff. So there's a flyer in there. The date and the time is on there. All right. So if anybody else has questions, do you guys have any announcements?
Yes, we have
Okay.
here.
Do you want the mic?
We have one question over here.
Oh,
Can you put the first slide up?
yes, I will. I'll put it back up while you're talking.
All right, we just wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming out this afternoon. How many of you learned something new? How many of you are inspired as well to go implement those things? Well, believe it or not, there's like blue sky and sunshine outside, so maybe that's a little promise of spring to come. We do have just one order of business here. We want to thank you for coming, and as a means of doing that, we have a little drawing here. So I got my assistant here, and why don't you shake it up, and why don't you choose a name there, choose a card. Pick one. All right, so who's going to get this basket? And we have Denise Fredrickson here. So Denise Fredrickson, you might have to say, you need to be present to obtain this. Did we say that? Okay. All right, well, we'll contact Denise Fredrickson then and let her have this gift back here. And part of this, we learned how to keep our gardens healthy. And I think it was no coincidence that
They have to be pleasant.
okay, all right. Just hearing from the higher ups here, our rules. Okay, why don't you choose one, Caleb? And why don't you read who this can go to? That's Cindy Pertzborn. There's Cindy Pertzborn here. Okay, why don't you try another one? We should have made the announcement to stay until the end, right? That's okay. All right. How about David September Johnson? Oh, well, they're here. Okay, well, Kayla, why don't you take that to them? All right. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Patty Marsh, who was instrumental in organizing this and inviting Dawn to come here, and also for Brent. And she has announcements to make as well.
Once again, I also want to thank you all for coming out. This has been a really good afternoon. And thank you, John, for all your expertise. So, you all have flyers. Everybody's got a flyer in here. But I want to encourage you to take some extras and give it to your friends and neighbors. This is our next event, April 30 to 5:30. What to do when the power goes down. And it's done by Moses. He's him and his wife are born and raised Amish, and they know how to take care of things. He's going to give us a lot of tips and skills. And we'll go through the canning thing, the drying, the water baths, the pressure cookers, and stuff. So see me. I'll be right out there. I'll get you extra flyers, and you can give it to your friends and neighbors. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.